On a Tuesday night from the great cities of Austin, Texas, and Phoenix, Arizona. We are coming to you to preview the AFC North's offseason, recap what they've done in free agency, let you know what they need to do in the draft, and overall grade any changes that happen at quarterback or head coach. Also, going to kind of preview where we're at in the NBA right now, as we only have a few weeks left until the playoffs. Things are heating up. We're getting some good games under our belts. A little bit of the tournament as well, but you've been out and about in Arizona this weekend. Went to a Diamondbacks game last night. You're watching the UConn and Duke game as well. Believe this is one of the largest comebacks in tournament history, and you get to witness all of it from the treadmill. What a great experience.
Yeah, so we watched the UConn versus Duke game, and when I got there, they were down like 20 points, and I like root for UConn just for like the sake that I grew up with watching like Kemba Walker, Hashim Thabit, so I always kind of root for UConn. And I don't really have any disdain for Duke, but they're kind of like the big guys in the tournament, so I was kind of rooting against them. But I'm watching it. I'm on the treadmill. I'm lifting my weights, and the next thing I know, I see it cut to below 10, and then it's 7, and then it's 5, and then it's 2 points within the last minute, and none other than fucking Braylon Mullins out of nowhere hits a three from basically half court. The whole fucking place goes berserk. It was incredible. But we got to witness that, and then yesterday it was the home opener for the D-backs, who started their season getting swept by the Dodgers. But they did all these renovations to their scoreboard and then to their lights. And because it wasn't super hot outside that night, they opened up the indoors, so you could see like the outskirts of Phoenix as well. And
Oh, cool.
when Chase Field is open because it's a dome, when it opens up, it's one of the best ballparks in the majors. Honestly, like top 15, because you could see like the desert, like mountains in the back. You could see some cactus, and then the game was electric. We scored 8, and then their bullpen is historically awful. So obviously there was some late time anxiety as per usual. Give up 6 runs in the 7th, which wasn't great. We go and get another beer before we go to like sit down for the final stretch, and lo and behold, we're losing fucking 6-6. So that was good, but Chase Field's a fun ballpark. I think you should check it out.
Do you go for any of? I know every baseball has their own type of signature hot dog. Are you into that, or do you follow all the baseball stadiums like signature ballpark food? Because I know like the Astros have their own special thing they do. I think the Kansas City Royals do like a beef Wellington hot dog, and then they all have
Mm.
some pretty crazy desserts. Is that pretty new for baseball, just to try and get fans back in, where it's a thing where I tried this staple that each stadium has?
I think like over the last 30 years, it's been like that. What Chase Field has is like the churro dog. So it's like a
Okay.
churro with ice cream in it. So good. It's not one of those things you can just get yourself. You kind of have to split it. But they have that. There was this bucket that you sent me that I didn't get to have this time around, but these games are so cheap. We actually ended up getting free tickets to go to the game. So I'm like, okay, then why would I not go to the home opener? And then other than that, like I get free tickets for my buddy who's in the military. I get ASU ticket discounts, which are like $6 tickets. So, but yeah, they have like I'm not a big hot dog guy, so I don't care about that. But like the food specialties, I know they just launched like a chicken parm that you can get at Chase Field. I don't know if that's what I want to get at a baseball game, but personally, I think like burgers, chicken fingers, and ice cream is kind of the standard. But not everybody likes to. The buddy that we had went with, he got the chicken parm last time, and he said it was really good. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty
I'm
cool.
not like a hot dog person per se, but if I'm at a baseball game, I feel like that is the best time to get one. You're really in that atmosphere, and you can get them pretty cheap. They're really not that expensive. Have they been just kind of sitting in a tub of water for the past week? Yeah, but we all love those steamed hot dogs that we get at baseball games, right? I feel like
I
baseball has like the most chill sporting environment where it's a summer thing where you can just go to it. It's not as an intensive a pregame as the NFL and the NBA. I really don't like eating food with the NBA. I'd rather just have an energy drink and lock into the game. Especially there's so many moments where you could just jump up at a given time where baseball, maybe you have one or two moments, but no one's like jumping out of their seat like, "Oh my god, can you believe what just happened?" It's like I feel like those are few and far between. So I feel like it is the best just chill summer sport, hang out outside, have a beer too, have some food. Where it's like the NFL, it's like a whole event where that's going to be your entire day.
Yeah, and that's what I like about baseball is like there's going to be those moments that you get up for, like if somebody hits a home run. But other than that, it's not like it doesn't demand your attention throughout the entire game. We witnessed an immaculate inning, which is a pretty rare thing. It's when you strike out 3 batters on 9 pitches, no walks, no foul balls, none of that. And it's
What?
only happened 4 times. It's only happened 4 times in D-backs history, and it happened in the 5th inning. And we didn't even know that it happened until like later on we got an ESPN notification. I'm like, oh, got to witness an immaculate inning. That's pretty cool. But like every year they have like these new condiments. I see that like Colorado Rockies are launching donut pizzas, and it's just a donut with garlic butter, Parmesan cheese, mozzarella cheese, pepperoni, marinara sauce, pesto, Italian. Actually looks pretty good. And I'm gonna
Yeah.
see the Rockies later this year. I might rock one of those.
Well, kolaches are pretty big in the South. Before I moved to Texas, I really didn't know what they were, and it's basically a croissant version of a hot pocket where you stuff it with anything. You can have like a peanut butter and jelly one. Typically, it's like a hot dog, or you put jalapeno sausage in it. And I feel like people, I guess donuts just aren't as popular anymore. I feel like everyone used to get donuts when I was younger, and now you rarely see, I feel like, people our age going out to get them. So I think donuts have definitely gone in a more savory direction where the Astros have brisket donuts. We just had a donut shop around us open up that does like brisket and jelly donuts. We went to like that briskets food truck that had like the biscuit, like brisket and jelly on it. So I feel like donuts are becoming more savory. Where it's like I didn't see too much of that before.
Yeah, I agree. But the thing that you wanted me to try, it's the fucking take me out to the ball game shake. It's a salted caramel shake with whipped cream, peanut butter cookie sandwiches, Kit Kats, and Cracker Jack in it. And if you look at it, it looks like fresh out of a diabetes clinic. Like this thing is insane. I don't think I could drink that like just myself. I think I got to split that with somebody because that shit's insane.
Probably like 3 or 4 people at that
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
It's probably at
We
like 1900 calories.
minimum. Yeah. I think it's fun. I think baseball's awesome when it's at this like the way they have it set up. They have the 9 for 9 challenge. There's different ballpark. You know what the 9 for 9 challenge is?
Not off the top of my head, no.
So the 9 for 9 challenge is each inning you kill a hot dog and a beer each inning. So by the end of it, you've killed 9 dogs and 9 beers, and you're just fucking I don't know. Your stomach's in ruins basically. But that's been a huge baseball thing for like ever now. But now the Mets have like their own kit, so you basically get 9 hot dogs, 9 beers for I think it ends up being like $60. But they're like miniature dogs and they're miniature beers, which is not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to drink the full 16 ounces, the full dog. You're supposed to put your stomach through fucking cardiac arrest. That's not the point. And they're trying to fucking commercialize it, and that's bullshit, as far as I'm concerned.
I could definitely do 9 Bud Lights. It's the 9 hot dogs. I feel a lot of people say they can eat 9 hot dogs, but in reality, if you can do that and you don't have a problem, you're probably like 6'6" or 6'5", and you're a giant, or you
I
just
I have a
have,
funny story.
or you
I
just
got a
have a
funny.
steel stomach.
So the 9 for 9 challenge, like a lot of my buddies try to like test it out. I don't like it because I don't like hot dogs, so I would do it with burgers probably and do a good job. But Devin, our friend Devin Spinners, aka the Fisher Cat fanatic, he was at work, and you know how like they do like the pizza parties to like celebrate. Oh, you guys are working so hard. Here's a pizza party. Well, they did it with like unlimited like hot dog stand, so you could like cook hot dogs and like that's like their thank you for them, I guess. Devin decided Like,
Is this
oh,
Hannaford or 7-Eleven?
this is Hannaford's. So they do this for me. He's like, oh, let me try the 9 for 9 challenge. Even though he's nowhere near a ballpark, there's no beer in sight. He's like, oh, I'm going to practice the 9 for 9. Even though you don't really need to practice for the 9 for 9, you just kind of do it. He's like, oh, let me do it. He gets 6 hot dogs deep in a half-hour lunch break. He gets 6 hot dogs deep, and then it wasn't that he couldn't finish it. It's that the shame kicked in. He's like, I just killed 6 hot dogs, and now I have to go back to work. That was why he stopped it. He got 6 deep, and he's like, I could have done the other 3, but I need to go back to work. And the shame kicked in. Because he, on a random Wednesday, just killed 6 hot dogs in a 30-minute lunch break.
He should have at least had like the alcohol-free Sam Adams. Sam Adams makes the alcohol-free IPA, so at least get the calories from the beer. It's not necessarily getting tipsy that you're worried about because you're eating 9 hot dogs, so that's not going to be an issue. It's just the calories that you're going to get even just from a Bud Light or a Miller Lite. So if you drink an alcohol-free beer on top of it, you have to like have something to equalize the calories. But you're just going for 6 hot dogs on break at work. Like, I respect the hustle, but
It's just
man,
such a gross thing to do. It's
yeah.
so nasty. And the thing is, like, if you do it at like a Fenway Park or Dodger Stadium, the 9 for 9 challenge is going to cost you like several $100s. Like a Fenway Frank is $10. That's $90 right there. And each beer is $15. So 15 times 9, a lot of money. So like, just do it at home. Like, it's just the 9 for 9 challenge is, it's cool, but oh my god, it's fucking brutal if you're actually going to go for it.
How long is a baseball game typically now with the pitch count? Like 2 hours? 'Cause I feel like they're starting to go by pretty fast. I feel like that's something that actually helped a sport recently as far as a rule change. But
Yeah, it's like 2.5 hours. It's like the average game nowadays. This last game was
okay,
an hour and a half. It was 3.5 hours, but most of the time it's anywhere between 2 and 3 hours, give or take.
so that's about 3 hot dogs a half hour. It's not too bad.
Which is just rancid. I hate hot dogs. I'm not a hot dog guy. I'm the wrong guy for that kind of thing. But I can crush. I could probably crush 9 burgers if I had to.
For sure, especially if they do smash burgers. Like
Oh yeah,
that'd still be tough though.
that'd be close for sure.
But we
But
did have the tournament here for March Madness, and it's been pretty good this year. Like, there's been some upsets here. Everyone comes out and fills out their bracket, but there's always a lot of talk. People try and say college basketball is better than the NBA. Where does the March Madness tournament rank as far as the other sports playoffs? Like, personally, I like March Madness, but it's just the quality isn't there with the NBA. A lot of people who don't like the NBA try and say that college basketball is better because they actually play defense, and you have March Madness, which is one of the best tournaments. Some people put it above the NBA playoffs. Where do you rank March Madness and just the college basketball playoffs with now the college football playoffs, maybe the MLB baseball playoffs, hockey, NBA, and the NFL?
I think it's like college basketball. Like March Madness is awesome. Mostly like the first 2 days when you see like the random upsets. Like I'm trying to think of the big upsets this past week, but like the upsets are cool. But after all the upsets are gone, you're left with Duke, Kansas, UConn, Kentucky, Gonzaga, and that you're left with the people who are always there. And I feel like March Madness is great for those first 2 days, and then after that, it's not as cool as everyone says it is. I would absolutely take MLB playoffs over that. I think of the 4 major sports, it's probably the best playoffs. The NFL playoffs is better. The NBA playoffs is better, especially when you get to the second round and beyond. NHL playoffs are a fucking grind. All 4 of the major sports are better than March Madness. Because after the first round, March Madness gets pretty predictable. Duke versus TCU. Who won that game? You guessed it, Duke. Oh, Arkansas versus Arizona. Arizona's like the best team in the nation. Oh, they obviously crushed. So like it gets very predictable after the first round. Like it's great that fucking CA Baptist made the tournament, but obviously they're not going to beat UConn or Duke or Gonzaga or Michigan State. It's just, I think it's an overrated bracket. And there was a thing that they did about a month ago. It's like keep 3, take out 9, and it had like the Wimbledon, March Madness, all 4 of the major playoffs, the Masters, the Olympics. They had like basically all the different sports events each year. And March Madness was cut in my list. I kept baseball, I kept the NFL, and I kept the NBA playoffs because those are all better.
Yeah, I'd even put the NHL ones. And March Madness is one of those tournaments that's exciting. But I don't necessarily think that the best team not winning is the best thing. Like, I think that's something that should be unique to football because football is such a physically grueling sport that you have to only play once a week. Where basketball, like, I like the NBA playoffs because I like to see a 7 game series where maybe a team does go up 2-0, goes up 3-1, and then you get to see another team come back and you can still get some pretty good upsets there. But college basketball, there's so much going on in March Madness. It's like you don't even know which games to watch as far as for an upset. And then some of the biggest upsets come just because a number 1 team was losing to a 16 team in the bracket. And it's like filling out your bracket's fun each year, but when it comes down to it, I like kind of the immersion of a 7 game series. I like the build up of the NFL season. I like those types of upsets where any given Sunday anyone can beat anyone, but the college basketball playoffs also, it's just you're now watching a brand of basketball where you can still play zone defense and not necessarily everyone on the court can shoot. And like, okay, is there more defense in college basketball? It appears that way, but that's just because the level of offensive talent isn't as good. And I'm someone who grew up watching March Madness, but I think college sports are just inferior to pro sports because hate to say it, I just don't like watching kids as much as the professionals play. Like if I'm gonna watch something, I'd rather watch the best at what they do versus 19, 20-year olds. And typically most of the teams that win are just the players that aren't necessarily gonna make the NBA or they're gonna be a journeyman. And then you have like a sophomore and a couple juniors on that team. And then they're just in a consistent franchise like UConn who is looking like they might go out there and win 3 out of the next 4 Final Four tournaments again.
Yeah. You know what, I compare March Madness to the first day of the NFL and NBA free agency where you're like, "Oh my god, Russell Wilson got traded. Oh my god, Aaron Rodgers is going to the Jets." Like you have all these headlines that come out the first day of of the free agencies, and then by day 3 or 4, it's just like, "Oh, Christian Kirk signed with the Texans." It's like, "Okay, that's cool." Oh, Josh Dobbs signs with the Patriots. Like the first 2 days are the highlight of the entire event that we're excited about.
Yeah, and I think that NBA gets a bad rap mostly because of the regular season, but when it comes to the playoffs, like this year is going to be really good. And Wemby came over and someone asked him, "What is the biggest surprise coming into the NBA versus European?" And he's like, "Well, the biggest surprise is everyone talked about how nobody plays defense in the NBA and like everyone just scores." And he's like, "Well, it's not necessarily true. It's just everyone's that good." Where it's like you can play perfect defense at times, someone's still gonna score. So it's like it's not only people not playing defense, it's just the level of talent has gone up so much that you can have a perfect defensive possession. If you have Steph, KD on the other end, it's not gonna matter. Like you have rare occasions where you have someone like Luca or James Harden that just don't try on defense, but I feel like that's pretty rare. It's like sometimes you just have a guard who can't play defense or it doesn't look like they can because the level of talent is so great.
Yeah, I agree, and that's why I like when it gets to the postseason, when the refs maybe swallow the whistle, and you're in for those games where you'll see like a 90-86 type game in some instances. You'll see superstars come out of nowhere, like just role players go absolutely ballistic. You have like the Matthew Dellavedovas of like the 2015 finals. Last year with the Cavs, you saw like Ty Jerome have a big game. Like those are the things like people get excited about college basketball because like Braylon Mullins made that big shot against Duke, or like in the past you saw like Kemba Walker have a game winner. But like in the NBA, you'll just see a random role player drop 40 points in like a game 5. And that's the thing that I love about the NBA is those random role players just going ballistic.
Yeah, it's definitely something that'll be fun to see this playoffs. But yeah, it's kind of March Madness where we're at right now. Excited for the Final Four. Is it the best? I would say no. I would say professional sports is still above college, in my opinion. But definitely some entertaining matchups there. And we're going to be going over today for our main topic the NFC and the AFC North. So we'll go over the free agents that they've signed, where their draft picks are, any head coaching changes, and what we think they need to do next season, kind of our expectations versus last year. So let's start in the AFC. We can't go anywhere but up if we start with the Cleveland Browns, right? So the Browns finished pretty much in the bottom of the league in every passing metric last year. They still went 5-12 though. They fire Kevin Stefanski or part ways with him, and they hired Todd Monken to rebuild their offense that was ranked near the bottom of the league. Notable positions that they need to fill: quarterback, offensive tackle, wide receiver, and then a edge rusher to go along with Myles Garrett. So before we get into kind of their free agents, what were your thoughts on them hiring Todd Monken?
I mean, for the Browns, I don't think Kevin Stefanski was the problem. I think the fact that you gave Deshaun Watson a fully guaranteed contract and then you traded Joe Flacco to your rivals mid-season, that's what probably did you in. And then the fact that like your main number one receiver is Jerry Jeudy, and after him it's Cedric Tillman and Isaiah Bond, just guys who haven't really proven it in the NFL. Their defense is good. So, they have Myles Garrett. There's some other guys I like: Denzel Ward, Grant Delpit, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. Those guys are studs. But after that, like, this roster has so much work to do. They have the 6th overall pick. We'll see what they do. But per usual for the Browns, they just don't have the quarterback, which they haven't figured out ever in our lifetime. So, yeah, the Todd Monken signing, I don't hate it, but I don't love it either because I don't think he's going to last any more than 2 years there.
Yeah, and that seemed like a signing where the Browns just couldn't find anyone else besides Todd Monken, and Todd Monken was good in Baltimore, but there were some issues performing in the playoffs where there was some consistency giving the ball to Derrick Henry. Were they using him correctly? Especially, it seemed like he was having a good game sometimes and they would go away from what was making them good. So it just seems like this is going to be his head coaching job and maybe one of his only opportunities to be a head coach outside of coaching in college. And now he's going to be with the Cleveland Browns, who you mentioned it, haven't been able to figure out the quarterback position. You could argue they got their quarterback with Baker Mayfield, and that was the first quarterback they had in a long time that actually got them to the playoffs. And then he beat Ben Roethlisberger in a fluky playoff game where you have a pass go over Ben Roethlisberger's head, and then it avalanched from there, and then Cleveland's able to win, and then they're in a close game against Kansas City in the playoffs. And ever since they let go of Baker Mayfield and then made that Deshaun Watson trade, it seems like the Browns have turned back the clock to being the Cleveland Browns, and I think they still have 2 more years left with Deshaun Watson, and then they're free from his deal. But even with that now, you have people like Emmanuel Acho telling Shador Sanders not to listen to Todd Monken because Todd Monken hasn't proven anything in the NFL. And then you're going to have a quarterback. It's not really going to be a quarterback controversy. It's just going to be controversial because of how bad it is. And then in free agency, you sign Tylan Wallace at wide receiver. You sign a tight end in Jack Stoll. You acquire offensive tackle and Titus Howard from the Texans. Then you re-sign Tevin Jenkins. You also get an offensive guard in Zion Johnson and Eggleton Jenkins. Then you get a couple defensive ends in AJ Espinosa and then Julian Aquaro. Sign a couple other players, but it's not like you're making any headway there either. It's just the level of talent at the skill positions is lacking so much from when you had Nick Chubb, who was really the engine for that offense, and then you had Jarvis Landry at the end of his prime. And now it seems like the Browns are very quickly turning back into the same Cleveland Browns, where it's like, now we're going to go through Todd Monken. He's going to have 2 seasons, and now it's going to be a revolving door. Probably going to miss on the quarterback next time around, too.
Also, like their offensive line the last few years has been one of their few relatively bright spots. They had a few guys retire, but to fill out their offensive line, they're like, you know what we need? A Texans right tackle, Tyus Howard. And then they're like, you know what? Let's fill up that left guard position. Let's get the Chargers Zion Johnson, who was ranked as the worst offensive guard in the NFL. So like they're trying to fix their offensive line with two of the worst offensive line pieces, Zion Johnson, Tyus Howard, and then Tevin Jenkins. He was fine, but then their weapons. They let David Njoku go. We're not sure where he's going to go. They have Harold Fannin, who played decently for them last year, considering. But their wide receivers, you have Jerry Jeudy, who's probably better as a 2. You didn't bring back some of the studs that you've had running the football. Yeah, Quinshawn Junkins is going to be your number 1. So, like, everybody, as far as their offensive line should be bad. Their receivers are pretty poor. Their tight ends are a poor class. Their running back class is pretty poor. That 6th overall pick, they can take whoever they want. Take the best available player at this point.
Yeah, and it's not going to be quarterback. So I think, do you think Shador's going to be just like fine? Like for me, I think his like ceiling is probably something like Snoop Huntley, like what he does for Baltimore as a backup when he comes in. I think that's probably the most solid we'll see him, where if he can maximize his strengths in a really good offense, he can be a stable bridge quarterback, but I don't see him elevating himself to like a Jalen Hurts level or a top 10 quarterback.
Well, he's not very mobile. His offense is not doing him any favors in Cleveland. I think if he was in like a perfect situation where he had his offensive line, he had weapons to throw to, he could be, like you mentioned, like a bridge quarterback, maybe a starter for a few years, but he's not the answer at quarterback for whoever's taking him. It's just a team like the Vikings, for example, who maybe they don't like the quarterback that they have. They have a guy that can fill that hole. Like, I think he could be fine. I think he could be like 24 touchdowns, 12 picks type of guy, 4,000 yards, maybe completes like 63% of his throws, QBR of like 90. Like, that's the Shador Sanders I think is like the peak Shador Sanders. But he's not going to have that in Cleveland.
Yeah, and I think the best case scenario for him was he comes out similar to Dak Prescott, where Dak was a 4th round pick, fell, then he turned himself into a really consistent player. But yeah, I just see the Browns turning back into the same old Cleveland Browns, because you never know what you have until you lose it. And as bad as they were at the end of it with Kevin Stefanski, he came in, had a couple really solid years with them, won Coach of the Year twice, had the Joe Flacco run, then had the Baker Mayfield run, and now you're going to see a franchise probably struggle for a long time, because I don't see anyone jumping out of their seat to go there for Cleveland. So, do you think this is fixable in the draft, or do you also see them circling the drain? Do you think this is like 5, 10 years? Because one of these teams has to suck, because even when Pittsburgh is bad, they still have a winning record. They're still in the playoffs, getting destroyed in the wild card round.
Yeah, it's going to be tough for Cleveland, especially because Baltimore has their quarterback, Cleveland has or Cincinnati has their quarterback, and Pittsburgh historically finds their guy pretty quickly. Like, I know they don't necessarily have an answer right now at who their quarterback may be. Maybe it's Aaron Rodgers. Maybe he comes back. But Pittsburgh is like a consistently good franchise. So, yeah, Cleveland's going to be screwed. They've been a cellar dweller for the last 25 years, and I don't think that changes this next season.
Well, Cleveland Browns fans, I hate to say it, but if you have any hope for your franchise next season, or if you agree with us and think you're potentially going to be circling the drain for the next half to full decade until we all die of a nuclear annihilation, let us know in the comments. So, Cleveland Browns not looking too good next year. Let's move to your favorite team in this division, though, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Probably your favorite coaching hire of all offseason. I know you're really excited about this. Mike McCarthy is now their head coach, and it seemed like that was someone that Aaron Rodgers wanted to get fired in Green Bay, and now he's coming to Pittsburgh to be potentially Aaron Rodgers' head coach, but we don't actually know if Aaron Rodgers is going to come back. It looks like until the end of April, shortly before draft time, is what the Roonies are saying. So, do you think Aaron Rodgers is going to come back? And what are your thoughts on the coaching change for the Steelers this offseason?
Such a boring hire. Like Mike McCarthy, I mean, you have Mike Tomlin, who's been there for a million years. He's been pretty consistent for them. They've never had a losing record. You get Mike McCarthy, who was old for the NFL 5 years ago, didn't really shine in Dallas whatsoever, despite the fact that they had all these great weapons. They had Dak Prescott at the peak of his powers and a fairly okay defense. For the Steelers, like they have a good defense 10 years ago, where they have like the Jaquan Briskers of the world, Jalen Ramsey 10 years ago. If this was their roster in 2017, I would be super excited for the Steelers team. But instead, like their offense is going to be fine. Jalen Warren's fine. Rico Dodal's fine. DK Metcalf, Michael Pittman, that's a fine receiver core. And then their offensive line is going to be average at best. Aaron Rodgers is not the Aaron Rodgers that we knew 10 years ago. He's probably middle of the pack now for quarterbacks. And then their defense is just old. TJ Watt's old. Hayward's old. Patrick Queen's getting older. Like everyone on their defense is old. So do I think they'll still be solid? Yes. I think they'll still win 8 to 9 games because they pretty much seem to always do that. But again, they're going to get to the first round and they're going to get blown out by whoever they face.
Yeah, and for me, if I'm the Steelers, I know like you're up in the air if Aaron Rodgers is going to come back, but if Aaron Rodgers doesn't come back, I don't know why the Steelers aren't a team that's, excuse me, pursuing Mac Jones harder. Because I feel like he's the perfect Steelers quarterback where he can come in and he has probably the best tight end, not duo, but trio in the league where you have three massive targets there. Now you have DK Metcalf, you have Michael Pittman, you have Rico Dowdle, who is good at times, and then you have Jalen Warren. So for me, like you have Aaron Rodgers, I get it, but if you want someone to come in and compete with Will Howard for the starting job and potentially be his backup quarterback or be able to play for a few games for you, I would say the Steelers should probably pursue someone like Will Howard because even if Aaron Rodgers comes back, you're not going to have the position next year to draft a quarterback. So why not go out there and trade for one? Like I know Kyler Murray's probably not your guy, and then Rich Eisen was talking about Kirk Cousins potentially replacing Aaron Rodgers if he doesn't come back this year. But I feel like this is a team that should be going after Mac Jones and picking up the phone on draft day.
Yeah, I mean, you might as well. Give up a fifth round pick for Mac Jones. He's solid. I think he's better than Mason Rudolph. We don't know what to expect from Will Howard. So why not? He's shown that he can be a starter in the NFL, even if it's just for like a year or two. And he has decent weapons. It's probably the best weapons he's had since San Francisco. So I wouldn't hate that. But Pittsburgh, I feel like what they really should do, and they're not going to do this for a long time, is just like maybe just have one losing season over the last, like, you haven't had a losing season in 20 years. I don't think that your fan base is going to cry about it. I think they would rather see you miss the playoffs and like actually rebuild than you consistently making the playoffs and not doing anything in the first round. But they're never going to do that. Pittsburgh's always going to be okay, but not great because they're stuck in the middle right now. And I don't know if they're ever going to get over the hump at this point, win a playoff game. I just don't see it. This team is too old, and when Aaron Rodgers comes back, that's not going to make them any younger either. So realistically, I think they should tank, but they won't do that.
And they have, Will Howard floating around there, but their like needs heading into the offseason were quarterback, wide receiver, cornerback, and defensive tackle. And they kind of addressed all of that in free agency where you signed Jamel Dean, re-sign Asante Samuel, sign Darnell Savage and Jaquan Brisker, and you also trade for Michael Pittman. So if you're the Steelers, are you probably looking to replace Cam Hayward like the Philadelphia Eagles did with Fletcher Cox, where you go out there, draft someone like Jordan Davis or you go out there and get another really solid defensive tackle. So I think for them, maybe cementing that defensive line so you get some more interior pressure along with Cam Hayward because he was really good last season. He was all pro, I believe, but he's still someone who can miss a game on a given week just because he is a little bit older.
Yeah, I definitely think they should do that because Hayward, I believe, is going to be 37 this year. Yeah, he turns 37 in May. He's not getting any younger. He is still an effective player, but if you can get somebody in the draft, I know like they have like Zion Young coming out of Missouri. He looks like he could be good. Linebacker wise, they have like the Jacob Rodriguez of the world. He could be good, but they have the 21st overall pick. I would go out if you can address that pass rush, get some pressure off of T.J. Watt, maybe get another linebacker in there because you have Cole Holcomb, Patrick Queen, and Alex Highsmith. Great linebacking core, edge rushers. Find somebody that can be second string behind Cam Hayward. I think that could be beneficial for them. And then after that, maybe draft a running back because Jalen Warren's going to have to get paid eventually, and you're probably not going to pay him, most likely.
Yeah, and they also signed Travis Homer, and the Steelers seem like they always hit on running backs, and just a hire with Mike McCarthy did seem like they're turning into the Dallas Cowboys a little bit. Even though Mike McCarthy has won a playoff game more recently than Mike Tomlin, that game the Dallas Cowboys beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so that'll be interesting. But for the Steelers, I still see 9 to 10 wins here because I do think, like looking at their free agency, they got better on defense. And with Michael Pittman and Rico Dowdle and Travis Homer, you're better on offense too. So if they hit on a couple picks in their draft, like Mike Tomlin's been a really good coach for a long time, but him and Mike McCarthy are from the same era. So I don't think there's too much of a difference at this point. And Mike McCarthy beat him head to head in a Super Bowl. Mike Tomlin's a 2-time Super Bowl champion. And Green Bay just decided that mediocrity was unacceptable sooner than Pittsburgh did and moved on from Mike McCarthy. But they had similar struggles in Green Bay and Dallas. Mike McCarthy and Mike Tomlin, that is.
Yeah, and right now they are literally the AFC equivalent of the Packers, except for the Packers have their future quarterback and look a lot more optimistic moving forward. So Steelers, they're going to probably be 8-9, 9-8, and lose in the first round, most likely.
All right. And that is our Steelers preview. So if you are a Steelers fan, let us know if you think you're going to win a playoff game this year. Are you optimistic about your free agency acquisitions? You're optimistic heading into the draft and about Mike McCarthy being your head coach. Who do you think your quarterback is going to be next year? Do you believe in Will Howard? Let us know all of your thoughts down below. Eager to hear what Steelers fans think about their team going into next year. Let's get the Cincinnati Bengals out of the way here. All right. So what did they do this offseason? They re-signed Joe Flacco. They signed Josh Johnson, adding another team to his Infinity Stones here. They signed offensive tackle Orlando Brown to a $32 million extension. They signed Boye Mafe to a 3-year, $60 million deal because JSN wanted all the money. And then you also signed Jonathan Allen at defensive lineman. Then you signed safety Brian Cook to a 3-year, $40 million deal. So, Steelers or Bengals pretty much just need defense. You have everyone on offense. You have all your wide receivers, all your running backs you could want now. And now you pretty much just have to load up on defense and get some offensive line help.
Yeah, and right now they have the 10th overall pick. They can go after someone like a Sony Styles out of Ohio State, who looks to be a good linebacker. David Bailey from Texas Tech. It looks like he's falling within that mock draft for them. Or if they want to go offensive lineman, they got Monroe Freeling from Georgia. But for them, I mean, if they had a decent defense last year, or even just an average defense, they would have probably made the playoffs. Joe Burrow's injury didn't help. But I will say, like, with the additions they made, Boye Mafe, he's a stud. Jonathan Allen's a little bit older, but he does make them better. And Miles Murphy last year was one of the few bright spots for them. Realistically, I think they just need better linebackers. So that's what I would address. And then their secondary, which was pretty much never been really great. So that could be a nice addition there. I just don't know if they can fix their defense in one draft. But at least you lose Trey Hendrickson, you bring in Boye Mafe. maybe you take a slight step back there, but at least you're able to bring in Jonathan Allen. So I think their pass rush should be fine, but get some linebackers, get some secondary help, and maybe then. You don't need anybody on offense outside of offensive linemen.
Yeah, and for the Bengals, you don't need a great defense either. You just need a defense that can get critical and clutch stops and maybe create a couple turnovers where if you're a Cincinnati Bengals team, what you should be doing is playing as aggressive as possible to give your offense as many opportunities with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Joe Burrow to go out there and score points. And the addition of Boye Mafe takes a lot of pressure off of you in the draft to get all of that defense made up at once because now you know you have an edge rusher who can go out there and make some plays. So if I'm then them, I'm going after a linebacker, someone who can really help me out and be a hawk in the red zone. And then after that, we're focusing on safety. And then everything else is just falling in between. But I do think that signing of Jonathan Allen and Boye Mafe is key just so if you're the Cincinnati Bengals, you're not thinking about getting everything on defense in the draft where now you only need a hit on one or two really good players and a couple solid key pieces, and then you're going to be in pretty good shape for Cincinnati because when it comes time for the playoffs and when it's cold, anything can happen, and the Cincinnati Bengals offense can operate as a defense at times if Joe Burrow is healthy, and that is really the big if now because we're now going on consecutive seasons where Joe Burrow has been dealing with injuries or a slow start for the Cincinnati Bengals, and the combination of both of them has been a season killer in back-to-back years where we have not had Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow in the playoffs.
Yeah, and that's been their biggest killer. If they can be fully healthy and Joe Burrow can stay afoot for 17 games, then this team is a threat in the AFC, especially if their defense can go back to just being above average at this point. Because when they made the Super Bowl, their defense was what helped them beat the Chiefs. That was what helped them have a close game against the Rams. Obviously, they've lost a lot of key players since then. But if they can just be an average defense, their offense is absolutely going to be a top five offense with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. And if Chase Brown can play like second half Chase Brown, they have all the tools offensively. If they can just avoid some sacks for Joe Burrow, then they're still going to be fine. But the key word is if. 10th overall pick is an important pick for them. If they can hit on him, maybe it's a good linebacker, then I think the Bengals are back in the playoffs this next year, and I think they jump the Steelers in the standings.
Yeah, and I think they should be back in the playoffs this year. And having Joe Flacco re-sign, I think, helps stabilize it. It's a 1-year, $6 million deal, has a max of $9 million in incentive. So I do think him being on the team stabilizes you, and then it's just these losses that we have where you get blown out by the Vikings in Minnesota, which was a really bad look last year. You lose to the Jets, and then nobody could tackle Colston Loveland at the end of the game. This is just inexcusable meltdowns for the Cincinnati Bengals last year. So I do think a good draft on defense should help them be back in the playoffs, but it all depends on Joe Burrow's health again. And if you're Cincinnati, Joe Burrow gets hurt next season, you miss the playoffs. Like, okay, some of it you can say it's on Zach Taylor, but I get why people criticize it, but I don't at the same time because, sure, on one hand, you start out slow, but on the other hand, Joe Burrow has also been unavailable. And it's not like Josh Allen is getting hurt every single time. It's not like every single quarterback who has a high sack rate is getting knocked out. I mean, Justin Herbert gets hit a lot. Has he missed 2 seasons in a row now of time? No.
No, he's missed half a season, if that. And so that's the biggest thing with the Bengals. Joe Burrow, he's missed time in pretty much every season outside of him making the Super Bowl. And when he did play, like, he was outstanding. Obviously, he was an MVP candidate. And he played outstanding in 2024. Last year wasn't quite as effective, but they need Joe Burrow to stay healthy, and then this team is going to be good. But it really all falls down on Joe Burrow and what that defense can do.
Yeah, so Bengals, I am cautiously optimistic next year, but I do think they are due to be back in the playoffs. So if Joe Burrow's healthy, should at least have 10 or 11 wins next year and potentially win the division because your competition is going to be the Baltimore Ravens. And You have a new head coach in Jesse Minter, and then you have the entire offseason where you kind of sour free agency, where you have the entire Max Crosby debacle. Then you turn right around and sign Trey Hendrickson, and then you're able to pick up center and Danny Pinter and Durham Smythe, re-sign Jacoby Awuzie and Jalen Hawkins. You also lost a lot of players like Isaiah Likely on that team. Still don't have a number two receiver to go along with Zay Flowers. And Derrick Henry has been excellent. He's been an ageless wonder for you, but when is he going to start to show signs of regression? And then also for Lamar, Lamar is someone who was banged up last season, missed some time, and then the Ravens weren't able to really pull it back together with Lamar, and Pittsburgh ends up winning the division. So, do you see Jesse Minter turning this team around? And what were your thoughts on just him being the head coach and how he changes the Ravens' direction?
I think it makes them better defensively. Jesse Minter was really good for the Chargers defensively last year. They had a top 5 defense, and now he's going to be able to play around with Kyle Hamilton, Trey Hendrickson, Roquan Smith, Matabuke. Like, they have studs on their defense. Marlon Humphreys is a little bit older, but maybe they can get the most out of him. So defensively, I think they're back, and that was one of their biggest struggles last year. Was the first half of the season, the defense couldn't stop a nosebleed at that point. Offensively, Lamar Jackson, he's been able to elevate talent even if he hasn't had the greatest receiving core historically. Derrick Henry, another guy who's going to be turning 33 this next season, but I've learned never to doubt Derrick Henry at this point. I've been wrong too many times about him, so he'll be fine. Just like with the Bengals, but maybe to a lesser degree, is can Lamar play a full 16 games? And at this point, it's he's bound to miss some time. It looks like he took a slight step back this past year, but as of right now, I think the Ravens are still the best team in that division, and Jesse Minter I think is going to be a good hire for them, especially getting a fresh take without John Harbaugh.
Yeah, I think he should be good, especially you have one guy in your ear for so long with John Harbaugh, where he was one of the longest tenured head coaches, along with Mike Tomlin. And then we finally see both of them move on. We have two fresh faces in the AFC North now. And I think you still have Lamar. A lot of people think the Ravens are going to take a step back just with who they lost on their team last year. But I think as long as you have a solid draft, your defense should be good enough. And it's really just on Lamar Jackson and is he going to play? Because I think ever since you lost Mike McDonald, your defense hasn't been the same. So Jesse Minter should be able to stabilize that. And then in the draft, I'm really looking to hit on a wide receiver here because you tried DeAndre Hopkins. We've had other players we've tried to bring along with Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers himself hasn't necessarily been a reliable number one receiver. And then you also lost Isaiah Likely. So I'm going to go after another tight end as well because you have Mark Andrews, who's been good with the Ravens for a long time, but you have situations like the Bills where he drops the critical 2 point conversion to win that playoff game. And then he's also had some injuries where he was coming off the Achilles injury a couple years ago. So I do think you have to get another tight end to replace Isaiah Likely.
I agree. And right now, current mock drafts are showing them taking Kenyon Sadiq, who's a 6'4", 250 tight end out of Oregon, who was one of the best players in the draft this past year. So Kenyon Sadiq could be a tight end that they go after. And then as far as wide receivers, I feel like they just need a big physical receiver. Zay Flowers is a good underneath guy, but maybe not a good deep threat. Last time they went for a first-round pick outside of Zay Flowers, they had Rashad Bateman, who I think is a fine 3 at this point. But honestly, I agree with you. Mark Andrews is getting older. They did bring in Durham Smythe, but I don't think that's enough. I would go out and get your future tight end. This is probably the last year with Mark Andrews. And then get another receiver to pair alongside him. And better yet, Tyreek Hill is still available. And I feel like Tyreek Hill would be a great fit for the Ravens. He would be a guy that brings them speed. And then if you can go out and get a receiver in the draft as well, I think the Ravens are still in business. I just think they need to make a few more moves, and their offense could be buzzing again.
Yeah, and I think like Lamar's an MVP, so how many more years? Is he going to stick with Baltimore? Maybe give it this year with the new head coach and then look around potentially at anyone who's available to trade. Maybe Stafford retires, the timing works up perfectly, and then Lamar goes to the Rams. But if you have another really good regular season, then you lose again in the playoffs. If you're Baltimore this year, then with the new head coach, you're probably looking at trading Lamar to help rebuild that team. But I think this year you should be better, and they should be the favorite to win their division right now. So with the North, do you see anyone being worse than Cleveland?
No, not even close.
And
Even
then
if the
you,
Steelers don't, if the Steelers don't have Aaron Rodgers, I still think they have a better defense and a better head coach, and I still think the Steelers are going to be above the Browns.
do you think the Ravens should be the favorite right now?
Yeah, if you had a gun to my head right now, I think the Ravens, they have talent on both sides of the ball, and you have an MVP in there, so I would still take the Ravens. I think they're still the most talented division right now.
Yeah, it's like say what you will about Lamar's injuries, like Joe Burrow's have been worse, and Joe Burrow hasn't been able to win an MVP. So I do think Baltimore should definitely be the favorite this year, but the AFC North should be interesting. I don't see a dominant team coming out of here where I can't envision any of these teams outside of Cincinnati if they make the playoffs going far. Like if they
Yeah.
run into Denver with Jalen Waddle.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think the Steelers do anything. The Bengals, I don't even know if the Bengals are going to make the playoffs. The Ravens are the team I feel confident will, and I think they could beat Buffalo. I think they could beat Houston or Jacksonville. In the West, I don't think either of those teams could beat the Chiefs right now with where they're built. I think the Chiefs are built much more for success and what they did in the offseason. I think any of these teams should be worried, can they beat the Chiefs? And right now, with the Ravens, the answer is no.
Yeah, answer's no. So will be an interesting ride in the AFC North. That's our preview for the offseason, what they need to do. And then next time we see these teams, we'll be going over and picking every single game for the schedule. So let us know who you have winning the AFC North. Is it going to be your team? And if you have a team in the AFC North, let us know your expectations for them as we transition to the NFC. And I said there's nowhere lower we can go besides the Cleveland Browns. Do you agree with that? That no team in the NFC North is going to be worse than Cleveland?
Not even close. Every team in the NFC North could probably win the division in the AFC North at this point.
Yeah, I agree.
So, and the NFC North is probably the best division in football at this point with how good they've been. You can argue maybe it's the NFC or AFC West, but outside of that, like the NFC North, some of the teams there, so much talent everywhere on every team there could win any other division.
Yeah, like the Lions are a stacked team, and they missed the playoffs last year. They had Sonic and Knuckles, and it just wasn't good enough because their defense was below average, and then just seemed like they were fatigued from all of their playoffs runs the past few years. And then let's start with the team that actually made some noise in the playoffs. I feel like the AFC North last season was defined by Caleb Williams falling back at the end of the game and then finding a wide open Cole Kmet to send the game to overtime against the Rams. And then the Chicago Bears got busy in the offseason. They re signed their backup quarterback in Case Keenum, signed wide receiver Khalif Raymond, re signed offensive tackle Braxton Jones, offensive guard Jordan McFadden re signs. Then you sign offensive lineman Jedrick Wills. You acquire center Garrett Bradbury in a trade with the New England Patriots in exchange for a fifth-round pick. You also signed Contavious Street at edge rusher. You signed defensive end Daniel Hardy. You signed defensive lineman Neville Gallimore. You also signed defensive lineman David Lynch, linebacker Devin Bush, and then you sign Jack Sunburn, cornerback Cam Lewis, and then you sign Kobe Bryant, which is probably your best sign along with Khalif Raymond. So as far as what they've done this offseason, they got busy in free agency. spent a lot of money. They also traded DJ Moore to Buffalo, so now you're saying Roma Dunze is our guy. Then we also believe in Colston Loveland and Cole Kmet being kind of our 1-2 punch in what we have coming out of the backfield right now. So for Chicago, they didn't have a head coaching change this year, but a lot of talent coming in. And then in the draft this year, they also have, the 25th pick as well to play around with maybe a center, edge, or a left tackle. But pretty much everywhere else is set. And then it's just, is Caleb going to take another step forward?
Yeah, and I definitely think he does. I do think that later in the draft, you'll see them draft a wide receiver to fill out DJ Moore's position. But the main thing, get that left tackle solidified. And then after that, their defense looks pretty good all around. You have edge rushers. Maybe you go out and get a right edge rusher for them. Their linebacking core is really solid. They have Devin Bush, TJ Edwards, DeMarco Jackson. And then their corners, Jalen Johnson's been really good for them. Kobe Bryant fills that out. Tyreek Stevenson's a stud. So realistically, the main holes for them, bolster that offensive line, get another weapon for Caleb, and the Chicago Bears are Super Bowl contenders at that point if they can land those two positions. Caleb Williams, he kind of struggled to start the season to some extent, at least with expectations, but he ended it with one of the greatest playoff throws in the history of the NFL. Two of them, actually, if you want to count the Packers game too. I absolutely think that we're seeing the a surgence of Caleb Williams. And this next year, I think he takes yet another step, and we could be talking about Caleb Williams potentially in the MVP conversation if they can land this draft. If they nail this draft, then the Chicago Bears could be playing in an NFC title game. I truly believe that.
Yeah, and they should have been last year. There's this one thing called taking the points and kicking field goals, and if they did that multiple times versus the Rams, then they probably would have been in an NFC Championship game versus the Seattle Seahawks. Do they win that game? It's a big if, and it probably would have been a battle. But I think Ben Johnson is going to just be the key piece for them because a lot of people are going to talk about Caleb Williams taking a step forward, them bringing in talent on defense in the offseason, them having a good draft. But the real person who needs to take a step forward and reassess himself is not Caleb Williams, it's Ben Johnson. Because there were multiple times where he was way too aggressive in the playoffs. I get going for it on fourth down, but he was just spamming the go for it every single time button where when you have an opportunity to take points, it comes around and it bites you. And especially at the end of the game versus the Rams, if you just went and kicked the field goal a couple times, not only would it have prevented a turnover from Caleb Williams, you probably walk away winning that game. And then if you did that versus the Green Bay Packers, you don't have to have a historic comeback to come out and win that game. So I do think like the biggest person, like sure, Caleb Williams take a step forward, but for the Bears to really take that next step forward, it's going to be Ben Johnson learning from his mistakes last season. And I don't know if he will because he didn't learn from Detroit and then he's going to try and do it again. And the NFL playoffs, the thing is, it's one and done. So you can make those mistakes in a game like the Packers, but when you have another game versus the Rams, okay, sure, maybe you get away next season with that, but then you get to the conference championship. Like, it's one and done here. So if you're going to have 4 consecutive games where you're spamming the go for it button, it's going to come around to bite you, and that's going to probably prevent this team from winning long term if he doesn't reassess.
Yeah, and I'd like to think that this Rams game is kind of haunted in their memory, especially the fact that they didn't go for it. That's what ultimately cost their game. So I do think that maybe there is some reflection there. For Caleb, I definitely think he's going to be a stud. Their defense is going to be a lot better with the additions that they got. Kobe Bryant, I'm excited for. So as far as a roster is concerned, there's not a lot of holes there. It's just getting that replacement for DJ Moore, getting that offensive line secure, and then Ben Johnson maybe going back to the drawing board with some of these scenarios and maybe just taking the field goal every once in a while because that does actually help you, score points in the NFL.
Yeah.
So
So for the
I am high on Chicago. I do think they win this division currently. No, I was just going to say I think
I
they're the
broke up
division
there.
winner.
Am I back? I think I broke up for a second.
Yeah.
All right, and that's Chicago. And then Let's move on to Minnesota. Um, they were 9-8 last year, coming off the 14-3 season with Sam Darnold, and then we saw JJ McCarthy. We got the full JJ McCarthy experience. He had multiple games with 300 plus yards passing and 3 touchdowns. However, we also saw him get injured multiple times. We also saw him look wildly inconsistent, but we did see him show some flashes. And then we bring in Kyler Murray, bring back Aaron Jones, re-sign Ryan Van Denmark, re-sign Eric Wilson at linebacker. Then they signed James Pierre at corner. Then they also signed punter Johnny Hecker there. But now we're looking at probably the most talent that Kyler Murray has ever played with. And then it's going to be, do you think Kevin O'Connell is head and shoulders above Cliff Kingsbury as far as the impact that he's going to have for Kyler Murray? And do you think a place like Minnesota is maybe a little bit easier to lock in and focus, especially when you have that winter versus a place like Arizona where that's the best time of year to be distracted, is kind of in the fall and winter?
Yeah, I think there's two things that are playing positively for Kyler Murray. First of all, he goes from playing with Marvin Harrison, who's unproven, Michael Wilson, a bit unproven, and a Cardinals organization that's maybe the worst in NFL history. So now you have Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. You have one of the best play callers in the NFL with Kevin O'Connell. And then on the opposite side of the ball, you have a defensive coordinator in Brian Flores that gets the most out of their guys. If he can just be consistent post November, which I think with Kevin O'Connell, he'll be able to do that. Let's not also forget, like you mentioned with Phoenix, Phoenix's prime is from October to really probably March for them. In Minnesota, that's the opposite. It's going to be cold. It's going to be rigid. There's not as much things to do in Minnesota. So I think Kyler Murray, we might be seeing the best of Kyler Murray this upcoming season. It's just in this division, how far does that take him is the question.
Yeah, and I do think that he wants to lock in and get paid, right? So it's like, and for him, he's just been someone who hasn't been healthy either consistently throughout his entire career, because people talk about, well, he's a short quarterback and can't see over his offensive line and make a simple pass in the middle of the field. Well, that may be true. The toughest part is just taking that punishment throughout the year. Good news is he doesn't really struggle in the cold, and then he's going to be playing in a dome with a really good Minnesota Vikings team. So, again, it's going to be, you now have three quarterbacks on your roster who all have injury issues in Kyler Murray, Carson Wentz, and JJ McCarthy, where we could very well see all three of these guys out at some point in this season dealing with an injury. So it's like, for me, that's
Yeah.
the biggest gamble for Minnesota.
Yeah. And I can say with Kyler, the three times that he has been healthy, they've had success. The 2021 Cardinals started off 7-0. He looked really good. He was the probably the early season MVP that year. And then injuries happened. They fizzled out. But this is an organization, and Kevin O'Connell, you've seen him resurrect the Sam Darnolds of the world. You've seen him get the most out of Kirk Cousins. So I'm excited for this Vikings team. This is one of those teams that I think could be a sleeper team and could sneak into the playoffs and make some noise. It's just, what do we get out of Kyler post November? Because that's what he's been infamous for. Starts off hot and either gets hurt or it just fizzles out. I think with Kevin O'Connell, we can maximize that with him.
Yeah, as long as he has chemistry with Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson, I definitely think the Vikings will be better than next year, and they should be in the hunt for the playoffs. And they have the number 18 pick. And, they addressed the quarterback. I don't think they're going to take another one. They have Wentz and McCarthy now. But I do think you probably go after a safety or a corner. Like, that's your other two big areas of need. And if you can have a really good lockdown defense and you hit on a all-star, all-pro cornerback or safety at number 18, then that's going to be what helps you compete with the Chicago Bears, because in the NFC North, on any given Sunday, like, any of these teams can easily beat the other ones, and sometimes it's a blowout going the other way, because the Vikings, they beat the Lions twice last year, and then they gave the Packers and Bears trouble when they played.
Yeah. I think another thing, so I agree with the corners. I think that would help them a lot. I also would like them to see them draft another running back because Aaron Jones is a lot older now. Jordan Mason is a good goal line guy, but maybe not the answer if you're going to be running the football consistently with them. With Kyler, I think that also helps having that running element. But if you can draft a running back, hit on one in, say, the third round, then I think that this team could really be rocking because that's been another issue of them. They haven't been able to run the football consistently since Dalvin Cook was in town, which was a long time ago. And with Aaron Jones now is entering year 32, that's not a great age for running backs. He hasn't really been the same since Green Bay either. So I'd like to see them go out and get a running back, maybe more of an explosive one, because you have the pass catching abilities with Aaron Jones, and then a more physical running back with Jordan Mason. So go out and get an elusive running back, and I think this team could be unlocked to that next level.
Well, yeah, if this team has a consistent like 1 through 3 down running back that they get in the draft. The thing with Kyler Murray is, well, he hasn't been healthy necessarily. Since DeAndre Hopkins, he hasn't really had anyone on his team you need to be afraid of or double. And people forget just how good and how elusive he is as a running quarterback. He is a baseball player, so he has that really solid slide. Now that you have Justin Jefferson, who you need at least 3 or 4 guys at a given time to pay attention to on the field, Jordan Addison, like his run game is also going to be unlocked for this team. And you have Aaron Jones, who's going to be your pass catching back on third down. So if you can hit on a solid physical running back in the draft, then the Vikings are going to be a hard team to stop that no one's going to want to see in the playoffs.
Yeah, I agree. This, I think, of all the teams in this division, this is the one that I think the most people are overlooking at this point across all the teams that we've covered so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Vikings are just one of those teams. They are arguably the best team in NFL history that hasn't won a Super Bowl. They've been to them.
Yeah,
It seems like
yeah,
they're
they've been.
always good. I can never think of the Vikings like in my history being bad. Like whenever I watch the NFL, the Vikings are always pretty solid. They've had some disappointing seasons, but I feel like they're a franchise that's always generally good. And then they have
Yes.
some solid playoff runs.
Yeah, I agree. This is a team. I mean, they were 14-3 2 years ago. Do I think they go 14-3? No, but could they go 12-5? Potentially. I think this team is good enough to do that. If we can get the peak Kyler Murray and they can hit on a running back, maybe solidify their secondary, with the right draft, this team could win the division.
Yeah, and I think the crazy thing was last year was your floor. And you know the floor for this team is 9-8, which is insane.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is insane that there's 4 teams in this division that could all be having a winning record again this year at this point.
Yeah. Well, yeah, unless there's an injury to Jordan Love, Jared Goff, Caleb Williams, or Kyler, like the floor for all of these teams should be 9-8 because I do think like pivoting to other teams in this division who people are probably going to overlook because they had a weaker season last year. That is the Detroit Lions, and they are 9-8 last year. Seemed like they kind of just got tired at the end of the year. They had some injuries pile up, and then their defense just wasn't consistent. But this is another team. They had to do some cap maneuvering, and they end up trading David Montgomery. So they break up Sonic and Knuckles, but they do bring in Isaiah Pacheco, who's going to be playing probably in a better run system this year. And then they also signed Tyler Conklin at tight end, which I think is a really solid pickup for you. And then you signed center Cade Mays, offensive tackle Ben Barch. You also signed Larry Borum, at offensive tackle, and acquired Juice Struggs, who's had some injury issues with Houston, hasn't really been able to get on the field. Then you also get a couple other players on defense, re-sign Malcolm Rodriguez. You get Chuck Clark and Christian Izien. But the Lions have been one of the best drafting teams over the past few years. Like Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes, they don't just hit on first and second round picks, but they're hitting guys like Malcolm Rodriguez, and they're hitting on guys in the 5th and 6th round where they've had really solid drafts, and they've had some players like Jack Campbell that they've been able to bring along. They drafted Aiden Hutchinson. They drafted David Montgomery, Amara St. Brown, Jamison Williams. They're pretty much their entire offensive line before was homegrown. Like this is a team that is really solid at drafting, so I do think they'll be able to reassess figure out some of the issues. It was really just losing Ben Johnson. And then I think overall fatigue from two long, grueling, mentally draining playoff runs. But I think this team's going to be similar to the Falcons, where maybe they have an off year, but I do think with how good they have been at drafting, they should be right back in it. And there's no reason why 9 wins shouldn't be their floor again. Maybe they don't make the playoffs, but I could see them, if they do miss the playoffs, still being 10-7.
Let's just look at. I have their drafts up. This is how their drafts have hit. Some of the hits that they've had over the last 4 years with Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes. They hit on their first draft. They had Penei Sewell, who's been a home run, Aleem McNeil, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Derek Barnes, all in that draft. 2021, great draft. 2022, they had Aiden Hutchinson, Jameson Williams, Kirby Joseph, Malcolm Rodriguez, all in that same draft. 2023, they had Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Campbell, Sam Laporta, Brian Branch, and Broderick Martin, all studs. Woo. 2024, they have Terrion Arnold as probably their main hit. And then they have a couple other role players that are maybe less known. Last year, they got Isaac Tesla, who's a stud. Doesn't get a lot of playing time given the fact that the receiving core is so loaded. But what we see over the last 4 years is that they're probably going to hit on at least one of these players. And then in the first round this year, they have the 17th overall pick. My biggest concern with the Lions this year is that they did lose Taylor Decker. They have had some offensive linemen either retire or depart. So an offensive line that's been very consistent for them pretty much the entire Dan Campbell era is starting to get older, or they're starting to have to fill those holes. They did a little bit in free agency, and obviously Penei Sewell is obviously going to still be a stud, one of the best tackles in the game. But that's my concern offensively. And then defensively, their secondary is still pretty weak. And then can they get a pass rush that stays healthy alongside Aiden Hutchinson and Lee McNeil? If they can get another edge rusher, then I think this Lions defense can be unlocked.
Yeah, I think at that 17th pick, that's definitely where you're looking for Detroit, because your defense, it can't create explosive plays or prevent them. So, like, it's not a bend but don't break defense, and it doesn't create turnovers. So you need to just solidify an elite pass rush at 17, where you go out there, just get an edge rusher who can hit it with Aiden Hutchinson, and then they'll be there all season long. Maybe you get a type of duo like Nick Benito that they had in Denver, and then also like what Cleveland was able to do with Myles Garrett, where you have two guys on both those teams that have the fastest get-off rate. So I do think that, Detroit has some rebuilding to do. They have to retool this year, but I do think having a down year to retool, it's not the worst thing in the world, and I do think a lot of people are going to overlook them. If you have another down year this year, though, then we start to wonder about Jared Goff, about Dan Campbell again, but I don't think that's going to be the case optimistically, especially with the Lions. I do think there are going to be more disappointing teams than them next season.
I also think the Lions are one of those teams that they're at best when they're the underdog. That's why we saw them 2021. They have this big resurgence. They win, I believe, 8 of their last 9 games. Then they have the best record in their history. Then they come back still at 12-5. This past year, after how much emotional turmoil they've had over the last several years, they were bound to come back down to earth a little bit. But the fact that you still have Jahmyr Gibbs, who's arguably the best running back in football, Amon-Ra has been a top 5 wide receiver in the NFL. Jared Goff has been statistically a top 10 quarterback. It's just been, can they stay healthy, and can their defense cooperate with them? So as far as a team that has maybe been overlooked this offseason, I think Detroit can come back to winning ways and get back over the 10-win mark. I think they could be 10-7, 11-6 right now.
Yeah, so I definitely think Lions should be right up there next season. Frankly, there's no reason any of these teams shouldn't win this division, which is crazy to say because the last team we have to go over is the Packers. And the Packers' main disadvantage this year is they don't have a first-round pick. However, they kind of have a first-round pick because Tucker Kraft was playing like the best tight end in the league, bar none last year before he got injured. Fortunately, he has that season-ending injury, but him and Jordan Love were doing some serious cooking early on in the season. They're getting him back this year. They don't have any first round picks, but I mean, this team really doesn't have that many holes. You're getting Micah Parsons back. You're getting Tucker Kraft back as well. It's just going to be, can you get enough defensive help to go along with them, and another edge rusher, maybe a corner as well, and some defensive line help. But other than that, like, this team really doesn't need to do too much in the draft.
I agree. What I want to see from Green Bay is address their corner position. I'm looking at their pass rush. They got Javon Hargrave there. He's going to be a stud with them. Obviously, Micah coming back is going to help them. Their linebacking core is pretty legit. And then I want to see Matthew Golden take that next step because last year he started to come alive a little bit towards the end of the season, but will he be the hit that they drafted him to be? I think he has the talent to be. And then you still have Josh Jacobs, who's a stud. Really in the draft, like bolster your offensive line, maybe draft a receiver. But other than that, your corners, that's going to probably be your biggest weakness is your secondary. But still a team that, I mean, last year they were 9-7-1 with Jordan Love missing time. So I still think this is another team. We talked about pretty much every team in this division can win 10 games. I think this team could also win 10 games. This team could go anywhere between 9 wins and 12 wins at this point.
Yeah, it's going to be, can you also get a backup quarterback to give you similar production to Malik Willis? Because when Malik Willis came in, he didn't have to do too much. Teams really couldn't game plan for him. And then it's also been, it seems like this team will get in a rhythm. Jordan Love gets hurt. He comes back. They're a little bit clunky. They start to find a rhythm again. Then Jordan Love gets banged up, and then he's in and out of the lineup. And that's been the case the past 2 seasons where they haven't been able to get a really chemistry on this offense or cohesion going into the playoffs. And they had a really good run versus the Bears, but with no Micah Parsons, they end up blowing a massive lead in that playoff game. But Matthew Golden did start to come alive in that playoff game. And then you lose some key pieces. Romeo Dobbs is gone, but you replace him with Sky Moore. So you at least add some speed to that team. Maybe Matt LaFleur knows how to use Sky Moore better than Andy Reid does.
Yeah. You mentioned the Malik Willis replacement. You know who they signed? Desmond Ridder. That's their savior potentially. But yeah, they don't have a first round pick. They don't have a pick until the end of the second round. So I don't know if they'll be able to hit on that corner. They've been good at drafting historically, so I can trust them there. But their secondary is probably their biggest hole. And then honestly, I wish they could just get like a true number one receiver. Romeo Dobbs is out the door. Matthew Golden, I think, has the talent to be, or Christian Watson if he can stay in the lineup. But they don't really have that true number one receiver. So I hope one of those guys either emerges or they can hit on a wide receiver in the draft.
Yeah, but it will be interesting. This division looks loaded. I get some people think, I don't know. I can't say that we previewed every NFL division right now. I can't say I can name a better division than this one that we previewed because I can point to one team in each division that I have question marks about where I think all of these teams, there's no excuse for them not to win 9 games.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like, I think the West has higher level talent at the top, but at the same time, the North has the Bears,
Which West?
the NFC West, because they have like the
Oh,
Seahawks, Niners, and Rams. The Rams are
I mean,
definitely a Super Bowl contender. Niners,
the
maybe if they stay healthy.
the
Seahawks,
Rams, yes. They made it to the conference championship. The Seahawks lost a lot of pieces, and then San Francisco. So I can't say definitively like the Rams or the Seahawks are going to be better than any of these teams next year, though. Maybe the Rams, but Seattle, they lost a lot of pieces.
yeah. I think that as far as a cohesive division, I mean, every other division also, there's one team that you know is not going to make the playoffs. The East, the AFC East, honestly, three of them probably could miss the playoffs. The East and the NFC, I think we can look at the Giants as a team that's vulnerable, the Commanders even, the Cowboys. The AFC North, the Browns are there. AFC South, the Titans are still rebuilding. West have the Raiders. Other West has the Cardinals. The NFC South, all of them are not playoff teams. And then here's the North, where literally if any of these other guys moved a different division, then they're probably making the playoffs and winning that division, whoever they end up relocating to.
Yeah, outside of the probably AFC or NFC West,
Yeah,
probably a lock.
yeah. But crazy division. I don't know. As far as the team I'm the highest on in that division, oh, man, that's tough. I think I'm high on Chicago. I'm honestly pretty high on Minnesota after we reviewed them, and I think Detroit is just one of those teams that I'm never going to count out in the Dan Campbell era because they seem to be that team that fights adversity the most, and because they have that extra chip on their shoulder with how they played last year, this is the team I could very well see rebound and be back to old ways.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see the Bears without DJ Moore because like DJ Moore struggled throughout the year, yes, but you think about some of the comeback wins that Chicago had. Who's one of the guys who's making a big play in most of those games? It's DJ Moore getting to the end zone. So I don't know, like, you're banking on Colson Loveland. Cole Kmet had a little bit of a down year, but he made the biggest play in the playoffs for a tight end, probably with that massive catch from Caleb Williams. But typically, Lightning doesn't strike twice for this division. The Lions won the division, I believe, back to back years. It looks like the Bears might do that. So it's like the Bears should win the division, but I honestly see the Vikings doing it because I could definitely see a year where a lot of people are sleeping on Kyler Murray. They just don't know what to think. But this is a team that went 14-3 with Sam Darnold, and people talk about, well, who's going to be the next Sam Darnold? It's like, could it be Kyler Murray? It's like, wait a minute. Kyler Murray never in his career was ever as bad as someone like Sam Darnold. Like, this isn't Sam Darnold. This isn't Geno Smith. This is someone who was the number one pick in the draft, who was 7-0 at one point, and he's also a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback and wildly talented, but he's never looked as bad in his career as Sam Darnold did with the Jets. So I do think you have a higher level of ceiling of talent coming in at quarterback, especially with what Brian Flores can do on defense. And then the Bears can give away some games here. So unless you find someone who's really going to replace what DJ Moore was giving you kind of in clutch time and at the end of the game, I do think that is a position where the number 2, number 3 wide receiver could come back to hurt the Bears.
Yeah, I can agree with that because DJ Moore was their good deep threat, and I think losing him, Roma Dunze, I don't think has proven to me to be a number one quite yet. He has a good relationship with Caleb Williams, but I don't know if I feel confident with him as my number one. That's when I would look at a guy like Tyreek Hill, who's still available and still very talented. Stephon Diggs, if he's not going to prison, could be a good fit for them potentially. I would go out and get a veteran receiver and then draft a wide receiver because right now with Roma Dunze, Khalif Raymond, Luther Burden, and Jade Walker, that just doesn't really seem to me like a team that could have a deep playoff run. I think what they do in the draft is going to be the biggest key.
Yeah, and I feel like for the North, it's literally so close that all of these teams are one key injury away from not winning their division. The Vikings, Justin Jefferson, if he's not there, immediately out. The Vikings, if Tucker Kraft is hurt again, or the Packers, sorry. If Tucker Kraft gets injured again, I would say you're not winning the division confidently. Detroit, if Jahmyr Gibbs isn't there, no shot. And
Yeah.
then for the Bears, Colson Loveland. He's the one guy that if he gets injured, he's your biggest playmaker on offense. He's been a really consistent tight end. He made the huge play against the Cincinnati Bengals where he dragged 4 guys to the end zone with him. Like, all of these teams are literally within an injury or a trade away from leaping the other team. So I really think that this division is we're not gonna know who's gonna win it until the draft.
Yeah, I agree. But it's going to be interesting to see. Probably the best division in the NFL.
Do you have like one team who you think is the worst, or do you like, you know what, all of these teams should be over under 9.5 wins? Maybe you give like the Lions and Vikings over under 9.5. I like that. The Packers, yeah, Packers honestly I'd put at 9.5, and then the Bears should be at probably 10.5 and
Yeah,
favorites to win the division.
I don't think any of these teams should lose any more. I think 8 and 9 at worst, but I think all of these teams should be like last year. I think they should be all having a winning season. I think all of these teams are loaded. The Vikings have a great defense. They have a new quarterback. Packers have a great defense, have a good quarterback. All of them have their quarterback figured out, and they have good weapons around them for the most part. So all of these teams should be good next year.
Yeah, so that is the AFC and the NFC North. Let us know who you have winning the division, who you think isn't going to be good, who are the biggest sleeper teams in that division. Definitely let us know in the comments below. Interesting to see what everyone has to say there. And then, speaking of that conversation, everyone is trying to talk about who's going to be the next Sam Darnold, who's going to have that career turnaround where they started out, they're a massive bust, but they're going to find that next chapter and then really find success here. So I have an article written by Jeffrey Chadiha, who is an NFL columnist, and he has 5 guys next season who could potentially be the Sam Darnold of next year. And for my criteria, when I think of Sam Darnold, I think of someone who was pretty bad, pretty much ran out of the town, but then turned it around when no one really thought it would be possible. I don't know what your criteria would be.
My criteria is somebody who sucked somewhere really badly. Like Geno Smith is another example of a Sam Darnold goes somewhere, is kind of outcasted from the NFL, has a 1 year deal, and then is resurrected, and then obviously in Sam Darnold's case becomes a perennial Pro Bowler and champion. So I would say similar to you, they suck somewhere else, they get kind of written off, and then has a 1 year deal and comes back to life.
All right. And then so at number 5 on this list, he has 5-year quarterback Malik Willis here. It says Willis is clearly the major long shot on this list because of the small sample size of his NFL track record, plus a depleted roster and organizational rebuild he's taking on in Miami. That doesn't mean Willis isn't on his way to resurrecting his own career. Dolphins bet on familiarity and potential of giving Willis a 3-year, $67.5 million deal at the start of free agency, especially with the new general manager and John Eric Sullivan and head coach Jeff Hafley, who knows Willis well. From the trio's time together in Green Bay, Willis spent the last 2 years serving as a backup to Jordan Love, learning about the quarterback play from the Packers head coach Matt LaFleur. Willis also performed well in limited opportunities, which counts for a lot. He started in 3 games for the Packers, going 2-1, 78% completion percentage, 972 yards, and 6 touchdowns. Just as importantly, Malik Willis ran for 174 yards and 3 touchdowns in those starts.
Yeah, I'm not superly optimistic that he's the Sam Darnold. For one, he was a 3rd round pick. Nobody really expected him to be elite. So he went to Green Bay and he filled in fairly well. But I think it's one thing to do it over a course of 2 to 3 games compared to doing it over a 17-game season. And Miami just got rid of his number 1 receiver. Their offensive line has not been good for them. Their defense looks like it's been pretty gutted there as well. And his number 1 receiver currently is Jalen Tolbert for them and Tutu Atwell. So really, they're going to have to lean on Devon Achane. And I don't know if Malik Willis has the talent to get to be that Sam Darnold figure who's going to carry this team to 14-3. So I disagree. I think Malik Willis' ceiling is they win 7 games and starts rebuilding for the future, but he's not the Sam Darnold. He's not going to win a Super Bowl. He's not going 14-3. I would disagree there.
It was Kurt Warner who said he had 32 dropbacks total that you really had a sample size on when you get rid of all the screens, design run plays for him, plays where he actually had to drop back, read the defense, and make a decision. He only had about 32 of those in his 3 starts, so they definitely were good at protecting Malik Willis and playing him to his strengths. And then they're coming from a consistent Packers organization to Miami, who is like, okay, maybe if you had Jaden Waddle, oh no, now he's in Denver and you're doing a complete overhaul in Miami. And sure, he's familiar with Jeff Hafley, but like Jeff Hafley was a defensive coordinator who also had an epic meltdown versus the Chicago Bears. So I don't necessarily think familiarity is really a good argument. And I think another good criteria is that he's going to a team that has the roster in place and a quarterback whisperer at head coach, and Miami has neither of those. Whereas like Sam Darnold
Yeah.
went to Minnesota, has the roster, has the coach, goes to Seattle, has the best wide receiver in the league in Jackson Smith and Jigba that year, and then he also has Mike McDonald, who's proven to be one of the best defensive head coaches we have in the modern NFL right now. So I think both of those considerations immediately knock the Miami Dolphins out of contention.
Agreed.
One guy, though, we kind of like to make fun of, I guess, is Tua. He's 27 years old. He's in year 7, and he is now an Atlanta Falcon. And I think I'm not going to read this one again because we kind of know the deal with Tua. Everyone is familiar with his situation, but Tua did throw for a league high in 4,624 yards and setting a career best with 29 touchdowns when he played an entire NFL season. So he has proven he can put up numbers, and then you're looking for a team that has a coach who can be a quarterback whisperer and then kind of already has the roster in place. And I do think with Atlanta, Kevin Stefanski has proven he can coach his ass off, winning 2 Coach of the Years in Cleveland, and he was with one of the worst organizations in the league, won a playoff game with Baker Mayfield. Then he has to deal with the whole Deshaun Watson situation. He's kind of out from under that now in Atlanta in a fresh setting with the arguably one of the best running backs in the league in Bijan Robinson. He could easily win Offensive Player of the Year in a given season. Drake London is also really good. So I do think the Atlanta Falcons fit the criteria. The problem is Tua has never sucked. He's always been injured, but I feel like Tua has always been at least a fine to passable NFL quarterback, but I've never looked at him and been like, wow, Tua is god awful. He's been like maybe 17 at worst, and then at his best, led the league in passing.
Yeah, I don't also agree. I don't. So I think that he could rebound in Atlanta for sure. Drake London's a stud. Bijan Robinson's a stud, and Kyle Pitts. This is his year, according to fantasy guys. But the thing is comparing him to Sam Darnold is Sam Darnold had a pretty horrible run in New York, where Tua really just had a bad season in Miami, where he threw 15 picks, led the league in interceptions, and really like the team just kind of fell apart for him. So as far as like adversity, he is going to Atlanta, but Tua, I don't think like what's the ceiling? What is his Sam Darnold moment? Atlanta's not winning 14 games. This team is not quite as built as that Minnesota team that had a great defense. Atlanta's defense is probably average at best. And Drake London is not Justin Jefferson either. So for this, if you want to put him in that shoe, I just don't think that shoe fits quite as comfortably as that Sam Darnold comparison. And for Tua, they're going to peak if they win 11 games at this point. And I don't know with Tua if that's going to happen. So I would disagree with this one as well. Although I do think he can rebound in Atlanta.
Yeah, I think they could win 11 games in the South if the other divisions that they're playing in the AFC fit that criteria, because I do think Tua can be a good NFL quarterback. It's just when it comes to big games and games in the cold, that's kind of always been something that he's struggled with through his entire career. And then injuries and concussions and staying on the field has kind of been his Achilles heel, where Sam Darnold has been seeing ghosts and playing really well. But I agree, it's not necessarily going to be that Sam Darnold moment where he goes 14-3 with Atlanta. I don't really see that, or goes out there and wins the Super Bowl, but I do think he could lead the Atlanta Falcons to an 11-6 season.
Yeah, I think he can make the playoffs with them.
All right, and then number 3 on this list, he has Mac Jones, and he says it may be surprising to see Mac Jones so high on this list, but this exercise isn't limited to this coming season, he specifies. Jones will spend this year as Brock Purdy's backup once again, and then his contract expires after that. So, Mac Jones, I could see a team where either their starting quarterback gets injured, maybe a team like CJ Stroud or gets hurt and the Texans trade for him, or Aaron Rodgers gets injured and he comes back for the Steelers and the Steelers trade for him, especially since he's in a contract year, then he can kind of walk. But I do think Mac Jones does fit the criteria because Mac Jones has played really bad, but he's also played really well at times in his career. He filled in, and with Kendrick Bourne as his number one receiver, played pretty well for the San Francisco 49ers, beat the Rams on primetime in Thursday Night Football. So if all the pieces fall into line and Houston's like, you know what, we don't want to pay CJ Stroud, we just want to give Sam Darnold 3 years, $90 million to be our quarterback and then potentially look to the draft because we just need someone who's not going to turn it over and then we'll be good. I could definitely see him going to a team like Houston or Pittsburgh and excelling.
I agree. I think this is a good comp because, for one, he was drafted high and it was a little bit disappointing for New England, although it doesn't help that they had a defensive coordinator as his offensive coordinator. A little bit of sabotage by Bill Belichick there. And then did kind of struggle in Jacksonville as well. He's bounced around a little bit, so I think he also fits that Geno Smith arc to some extent. San Francisco, he's had a little bit of resurrection. So, and that's kind of like what we saw in Carolina with Sam Darnold for those 3 games. So he fits it pretty well, I would say. Now, where does he go that fits that for him? I think if something happens to Brock Purdy, he's already done that in San Francisco. He could be successful there. And then outside of that, like you mentioned, Houston could be fine. Pittsburgh could be fine as well. Maybe it's a team like Indianapolis who doesn't want Daniel Jones. Indianapolis could be fun, but I do think Mac Jones could be resurrected, and I think this is the closest comp so far that I agree with.
Yeah, no, I definitely think Mac Jones could be resurrected. And I think a team should take a chance on him. If I was Houston, I would just bring him in to put pressure on CJ Stroud. But the fact that he's in a contract year and he'll be able to pick a new destination next season, I think that's going to be beneficial. I think Baker Mayfield's contract's also going to be up after this year. And then Minnesota's going to have their Kyler Murray experience. Atlanta's going to have their Tua and Michael Penix experiment. And then the Arizona Cardinals, Michael LaFleur just said he thinks Gardner Minshew and Jacoby Brissett are both a fit for his team. But after next year, I mean, if you're not in love with Jacoby Brissett and Gardner Minshew, you can definitely give Gardner Minshew a call there. So I do think there will be a solid market for Mac Jones, and he should succeed because I don't think there's any reason why he shouldn't be a Andy Dalton prototype player.
Yeah, I think Andy Dalton's a good comp for him. I mean, he's accurate. He doesn't necessarily have the best arm, but he's a coachable guy. He's not, an egomaniac. Maybe not as mobile as you'd like him to be, but I think if you can fill him in the right situation with a good offensive line and good receivers around him, then I think he can be a starting quarterback.
All right. And then at number 2, we have Kyler Murray. And Kyler Murray is going to a similar situation as Sam Darnold. He's going to Kevin O'Connell, has Justin Jefferson, elite talent on offense, arguably a top 5 wide receiver. And then Jordan Addison's arguably one of the best number 2 receivers in the league. Still have Hawk there as well. Brought back Aaron Jones, and then that was the team that went 14-3 with Sam Darnold. So it's like, do you like the talent of Kyler Murray? Do you think that can be better than Sam Darnold? So I do agree with this one. The only problem is Sam Darnold never looked as good as Kyler Murray did ever in his career, and Kyler was kind of just in a bad situation with Arizona, and I guess Sam Darnold was with the Jets too, but at least Kyler looked good at one point, so I don't think this is necessarily fair.
Yeah, I mean, Kyler Murray was a Pro Bowler with the Cardinals. The issue with him lately has been that he's been hurt and not in the best fit. So, do I agree that I think he could be resurrected in Minnesota because he is kind of in the lowest point of his career? Sure. But I don't think he fits the Sam Darnold narrative because he hasn't really struggled necessarily in Arizona. He just hasn't had a good team around him. And now in Minnesota, he will.
And then at number 1, I know you're going to like this one. Above Kyler Murray, above Mac Jones, above Tua, above all of these guys who have had success in the NFL, we have none other then Daniel Jones is who he thinks is going to be the number one option to be the next Sam Darnold, returning to the Indianapolis Colts, I believe, on a 2-year, $88 million deal for them. And then his argument is like, well, Tyler Warren, and then also like Jalen Hurts was an MVP candidate with Shane Steichen. So doesn't that mean Daniel Jones will be too? Right? Right?
Yeah, well, this is like we mentioned before with like sometimes in the NFL when we see the champion kind of change the league a little bit. Like for example, the Eagles had the tush push. We started seeing the tush push everywhere. The Rams traded for Matt Stafford, and then we see the Russell Wilson trade happen. Here's a scenario where the Seahawks are successful with signing Sam Darnold. So then the Colts go and see Daniel Jones as the next potential Sam Darnold candidate. The difference, though, is that their number one receiver is Alec Pierce, who's good, but not great. Jonathan Taylor, yes, he's great. Their offensive line is fine, but I just don't see it. And plus, also, like Daniel Jones has already kind of had his Sam Darnold arc. This past year, 19 touchdowns, 8 picks, 100 QBR. Like, he's already had his resurrection to some extent. People already put him in a higher regard now. I just think this is kind of a lazy take for them. And I also don't think Daniel Jones has the same moxie that Sam Darnold has. So therefore, I don't think he's going to be the next Sam Darnold resurrection story.
Yeah, no, and it's like Daniel Jones is just one of these guys that people want to fall in love with, but like Daniel Jones has two of the worst combinations, which is being athletic but uncoordinated, where he can get outside the pocket and run, but he'll still fall on his face and trip over himself. And then he's also, how do I say this, retarded. So it's like you have this guy come in from the Giants, and then he has injury issues. He hasn't had too many good runs, and he couldn't figure it out with Saquon Barkley, and the Giants were kind of a dysfunctional offense. And then he's playing really well with the Indianapolis Colts, but he's beating some of the worst teams in the league. And then people were just hammering the drum about Drake May is only good because of the schedule, even though he did beat the Buffalo Bills on Sunday Night Football. They won the division. He was in another close game with the Buffalo Bills, but the refs had other things in mind in that game. But like everyone's talking about Drake May, well, he can't beat a winning team. Their schedule was the easiest in the NFL. Like Daniel Jones literally played the easiest stretch of games and then got injured and then dipped out for the rest of the season. And now you re-sign Michael Pittman, or you re-sign Alec Pierce, but Michael Pittman's out the door. You're banking on Tyler Warren, and then it's really Jonathan Taylor, who he played really well the first half of the season and then kind of disappeared. Where at one point we were like, hey, is Jonathan Taylor a favorite in the MVP? Are we finally going to have a guy who can rival Adrian Peterson's type of season and be an MVP candidate? And then at the second half of the season, no one was even talking about Jonathan Taylor after he was on a historic run.
Yeah. And I'm looking at their schedule from this past year. Of all the teams that they faced, right? They faced the Broncos, and I'm only going to mention playoff teams. The Broncos in week 2, when they're not fully in gear yet, and they had the field goal that helped them get the win. They should have lost that game. But he did play well. I'll give him credit there. The Rams game, he throws 2 picks. They lose that game. Doesn't play amazing there. And then the Chargers game, yes, he plays well. 288, 2 touchdowns. I'll give him credit there. The Steelers game, they lose because of Daniel Jones, because he throws 3 interceptions, has a QBR that's below 60. And then,
Yeah.
which I wouldn't even, Kansas City's not a playoff team, but he struggles against Kansas City in overtime. They lose that game. And then, really, the last game before he's fully hurt, we have the Texans game, which he throws for 50% completion rating. And then the last game, he throws 7 passes against the Jags before he gets hurt, and he throws an interception, QBR in the 50s. So, of all the playoff games, really the only game that I can really give him flowers for is the Broncos and Chargers game. Broncos was in week 1. Chargers game was when the offensive line was in shambles, and everybody was beating up on the Chargers at that time. So, I don't want to hate on Daniel Jones too much because if he can be resurrected, good for him. But I just don't think he's the guy to do it.
Yeah, and you know what? I can hate on him now because Daniel Jones has gotten his money. So it's like he's fair game at this point. It's like he got another contract with the Indianapolis Colts because They drafted Anthony Richardson. That's not going to work out. But like he threw 7 passes versus the Jaguars and got hurt. People are like, oh, okay, must have been a gruesome hit, right? Like, no, it was a non-contact injury. And that's just who Daniel Jones is, and that's the problem. He's the type of guy to sneeze and then get a concussion or throw a muscle out. Like
I
that's
can
just
also
who
hate on
he
Daniel
is.
Jones. I can also hate on Daniel Jones because he took the queen of the sports world off the market in Kay Adams. He dated Kay Adams, and I think they still are dating. So for that, I can actually say fuck Daniel Jones, respectfully.
Yeah. I mean, that's just Kay Adams has bad taste. So
She
that's
does.
honestly LK Adams for her.
Very true.
But that is kind of the article there. Putting Daniel Jones number 1 is wild, though. Strong disagree there. I would put everyone else above Daniel Jones on this list. I'd probably rather have all of those other quarterbacks, especially in Indianapolis. You could argue Malik Willis, but I would just go with the potential there. But let us know who you think is going to be that next journeyman quarterback, especially like we see these trends in the NFL when a team wins the Super Bowl. Everyone's looking for their Sam Darnold now that the Seattle Seahawks were able to get an affordable quarterback and win. And that's kind of how you have to do it in the NFL. We saw after the Rams trade for Stafford, I believe Russell Wilson went on the move. And then I think there was another quarterback, can't think of their name off the top of my head, but that ends up being a disaster. So typically, when teams try and chase these trends after a team wins the Super Bowl, you're a year behind already, and it typically blows up in your face and doesn't work out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we'll see the same with that Sam Darnold debacle. Honestly, I don't know if that Malik Willis contract's going to age very well. 67 million for Malik Willis, who has had realistically 4 games that he's played consistently, and in some games he's throwing less than 20 passes. I'm not overly in love with that, so I think that one could blow up in their face. And I also think for Indianapolis, a team that hasn't really had a good quarterback since Andrew Luck, that could be another team that it blows up in their face.
Yeah, so definitely interested to see if any of these quarterbacks work out. Let us know who you think is going to be the most interesting quarterback next year. Um, Speaking of teams, there's one stat I want to bring up, and it's a historic stat. You probably haven't seen it this year, but a lot of people are aware the Charlotte Hornets have been really good in the second half of the season, and they started out 16 and 28. But the Hornets have outscored their opponents by 4.7 points per 100 possessions, which is the league's sixth best mark. That's also an improvement from last year being outscored 9.1 per 100 possessions, which is fourth to last season. And this is a jump of 13.8 points per possession, which is the second biggest season to season improvement in the 30 years which we have that data. The last team to do that was the 07-08 Boston Celtics, which was a 10.8% net rating difference. And then before that, it was the San Antonio Spurs from 97 to 98. What happened then? Oh, they got Tim Duncan.
No, and what happened to the Celtics that year? Did they get Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen and won the championship?
I
That's
think they
a
drafted
crazy.
Rondo that year too. I think Rondo was a rookie in '07.
Yeah, yeah, that checks out. So like this Hornets team is exciting. I like Con Knipple a lot. I love Lamelo Ball. Um, this is a huge stat. I wish they got hot sooner because it looks like they are going to be playing in that play-in tournament, most likely against Orlando or Miami. But great story all around. We still have the Miles Bridges of the world. Brandon Miller's played well, but Kobe White off the bench has been playing well. They have Grant Williams. So I like this Hornets team a lot. Great sign. And whether they do anything in the playoffs remains to be seen. But I think this is a sign of a team that is ascending and on the up.
Yeah, and as far as 3 pointers made season leaders, you have Con Kneppel as a rookie who is leading the league at 257. He's 10 threes better than Luca. And then at number 3, you have LaMelo Ball. So you
I should
clearly have
say.
a team that can shoot high volume threes. LaMelo's someone who likes to have the ball in his hands. And then Concanepo, you get him from Duke. Him and Cooper Flagg were both on that same team last year. And what he does is he's someone who's really good off the ball, who can hit shots for you and get hot. So this team's going to be a problem. The thing is with them, they can probably be pretty streaky. So in a play-in tournament game, if their three-point shooting is off, I think it could be tough. But I do think they should beat Miami. Preferably, I would rather have Charlotte as the A seed, and I would rather have the 76ers probably pull in at that 7th or 8th seed as well, because you get Paul George back, Joel Embiid, VJ Edgecombe, and then we'll see another really good rookie there. And then Concanepo coming into the playoffs. You never know with someone like LaMelo Ball how he's going to rise up in some of these moments. And they have had some battles with Miami and the 76ers, and they've lost to both of those teams recently, and they lost to Boston. So it'll be interesting to see how the Charlotte team turns it around, but already a big step forward this season with the second biggest point improvement. I saw that stat and I thought that was something shocking. Like, we don't see that too often in the NBA where this is the second biggest improvement since the stat was tracked.
Yeah, and especially if you're in the same company as the Spurs and the Celtics, two teams that they get Tim Duncan and then they form the big three. That's good company to be in. I think this helps with Concaniple's Rookie of the Year case. Will he win it? Cooper Flagg has other things to say, but Hornets an exciting team, and I do think they can make it out of the play-in tournament. The Pistons are a team that if they match up with them, depending on how the Pistons play, could be a good team to keep an eye on. They could be on upset alert there. But Miami, they've been playing well over the last year or so. So I think this will be interesting to see how they plan out.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Like, if we look at briefly just where the playoff seedings are right now, the only bad matchup I can envision in the East in the first round would be if Miami was the eighth seed and played Detroit without Cade Cunningham. Because if Cade Cunningham has a collapsed lung, just the style of grit and grind, we're going to get down, muddy the game up. This is going to be a defensive battle. And then also two teams that can get kind of streaky. Detroit definitely has the bodies to bump around Tyler Hero, so I don't think that'll be an issue. And then someone like Paul Reed, and then you get a healthy Jalen Duren going back and forth with Bam Adebayo. Like, I think defensively, Detroit is still going to be good without Cade. And then if you go up against the Miami team that, like, outside of Bam and Tyler Hero, it's kind of up in the air who's going to be your offensive threat. I just think that would be a grueling, like, 7 game series where maybe you only have a game where both teams get over 100 once.
Yeah, I'm not confident that Miami's going to get through the play-in tournament. I think what's going to most likely happen is the Sixers are going to beat the Magic if the seeds remain the same. They would go out and face the Celtics in the first round, and then I think the Miami Hornets game is going to be interesting. I think Miami just doesn't have enough firepower. The Hornets would win that, and then they would also have so they would then face the Magic, and I think the Hornets beat the Magic. So we would see Pistons and Hornets and Sixers Celtics, in which case the Hornets I think can steal a game or two against the Pistons. Pistons still have enough talent that I think they still overcome them. And then the Celtics I think take care of the Sixers pretty much like they always do.
Yeah, like, I do think the Sixers are going to be a tough matchup, though, especially Paul George is an older player, but he's had a lot of time to rest with his suspension from doing, I think he was doing like meth or whatever. And then he comes back. The problem is he's someone who disappears. VJ Edgecomb's a rookie, and then Joel Embiid is unreliable. So, like, I just don't think they would have enough to get past Boston at this point. And then right now, you kind of have the interesting thing in the East is Atlanta, Toronto, and Philadelphia seemingly all in a deadlock, 5 through 6. So if I'm Boston, I would much rather see Atlanta in the first round and then have um, Philadelphia move up to that 6th seed. And then if they played the Knicks in the first round. I think they would give the Knicks a lot of trouble. It's like the Knicks are good this year. It just seems like they don't have enough to really get it done where maybe they're in the conference championship or they're in the second round again. It just something is off with the vibes there. So I do think like Philadelphia and New York would be probably a tough 6-7 game series where if you're Boston and you get to play maybe Orlando, Atlanta, Charlotte, or Miami in the first round, you feel a lot better.
Yeah, I'm not concerned with who the Celtics face. I think they're the best team in the East currently. For the Pistons, I think they would prefer to face a team like the Hawks or the Magic, ideally in their matchup. But the Knicks, I mean, whether they face the Sixers or the Raptors, I still think the Knicks are good enough to beat them in a 7 game series. Sixers, it probably goes 5 or 6, but the Raptors, I think they take care of them in 5. Um, and then for the Pistons, it's going to be interesting to see with them because without Cade, I'm witnessing a team that was one of the best teams in the league all year. But without their best player, I think the team that would give them the most trouble could be a team like the Hornets with them. You have a little bit of body with Grant Williams there as well. Miami is another team that I'm not going to count out. Maybe they don't have the most impressive roster, but I have seen them get to a finals consistently over the last 5 years. They've made it to 2 finals appearances, so I can trust them there. I think they're gritty enough that they can go toe to toe with the Pistons, but every other team, like the Cavs would probably benefit from facing the Raptors or the Hawks, but I still think the favorites are going to be the Celtics or Knicks.
Yeah, and the Cavs, you're like kind of sitting in limbo right now because you're a half game back from the Knicks right now. So the Cavs are a team that's still very much in play for the 3 seed. The Knicks just came off a really tough road trip. They played OKC Sunday, and then they played the Rockets, and I believe the Knicks have one of the toughest schedules to finish up the year. So the Cavs are a team that's really eyeing that 3 seed. And then if we get like Cleveland and Philadelphia in the first round, I think that would be entertaining with Donovan Mitchell and Mobley going up against Tyrese Maxey and VJ Edgecombe and Embiid. But like the 3 seed is also very much alive in the East, and I feel like things have really gotten tight just even since looking at this last week from 4 down to 7.
Yeah, and I feel like with the Cavs, the Knicks have been struggling the last few games. They've dropped 3 straight, where the Cavs are starting to heat up. Cavs have size. I think they can definitely make some noise in this playoff run. I just think the Knicks have the best of the roster of the two, so I think they'll still keep that 3 seed. Those top 3 seeds are the teams that I feel the most confident in when it comes to the East. But if the Cavs were to jump them and they face the Raptors or the Hawks or the Magic or Sixers, I still think the Cavs can pull out that series in 5 or 6.
Yeah, I think the Cavs should have an easier schedule because they're only a half game back from the Knicks. So it's like even if so the Cavs have one of the top 5 easiest schedules remaining entering the final stretch of the season. So I do think
Let's see
they
who the
will
Cavs
jump
face.
into that 3 seed.
So the Cavs are going to face the Lakers, Golden State. Then they have Indianapolis or Indiana, Memphis, 2 games in Atlanta, and then Washington. So of those, the Lakers game's live. I'm not sure what the score is currently, but Golden State, I think they can beat them. Indiana's, they're going to definitely get them. So I think they realistically can finish the last 7 games going at least 6-1 confidently. With the Knicks schedule, who do they face?
The
They got
Grizzlies, Bulls,
Memphis.
Hawks, Celtics, Raptors, and Hornets.
So they can go probably 4-2 in that stretch, maybe three
Yeah,
and
the
three.
last 4 games are tough. I'd say Cleveland probably has their sights set on the 3 seed. And honestly, if I am New York, I don't want to face Boston in the second round. I would rather wait until the conference championship. But like really if you're playing that game, it is the question of do you want to face Boston earlier where potentially Jason Tatum hasn't fully gotten his legs under him because I do think the longer the playoffs are played, the better Jason Tatum is gonna get. We saw last night he had a season high 32 points versus the Hornets, where Jaylen Brown was sitting out, and then Peyton Pritchard played well in that game. So I do think like if you're playing the Celtics, I would rather get them earlier with a less healthy Jason Tatum because he's just gonna get better every single round.
Yeah, I can agree. Knicks definitely want to avoid them. Um, but I think if we look at the schedule side by side, I do think Cleveland actually does end up leaping the Knicks. So then we'd see Knicks and Pistons in the second round, and then Celtics would face uh, Cleveland in that regard, most likely. And I think the Celtics can take care of Cleveland pretty easily.
Yeah. Cleveland's always tough, but it'll definitely be a fun series. So, yeah, that is the East. And then the West, it's close. I mean, the Spurs, Lakers, and Thunder are all 9-1 in their past games. The Thunder are 5-0 in overtime now, which is a ridiculous stat. They played the Pistons, albeit without Jalen Duren and Cade Cunningham, but they were also missing Hartenstein and Jalen Williams last night. They had a big win, and then they're 60-16 right now. Spurs are 57-18. So it looks like those two are going to stay the same, and then the Lakers are playing themselves into the 3 seed right now, and then we have the Nuggets, Rockets, and Timberwolves. Just like the East, 4 through 6 is a coin flip right now. Is there a preference if you would rather see Denver play Minnesota again in the first round in the playoffs, where they faced each other in the playoffs a couple times over the past few years, or would you rather see maybe Minnesota play the Lakers in a rematch of last year and Houston face Denver, or do you like how it is?
I think the way it is now is perfect because you would get Lakers, you get LeBron versus KD, and then you would get a rematch of the Nuggets and Timberwolves series. So I think the way it is now is perfect. And then with the play-in tournament, you would see the Suns versus LA. That could be a fun game, although I do think the Clippers are probably going to beat the Suns most likely there. And then as far as the eighth seed, um, I think the Warriors take the Trailblazers, and then Suns and Warriors. That's going to be a coin toss, but I'll pick the Suns for now. So that would position the Thunder versus Suns, and then Spurs versus Clippers, which I think would be a great matchup. Although I think the Spurs and Thunder take care of business, most likely in a sweep. Maybe the Clippers can steal a game, but definitely would be an interesting game to see. But I think right now the way it is the way I would shake it out. You get Kevin Durant versus LeBron, which we haven't seen in quite some time, so that would be exciting. And then we would see a rematch of Anthony Edwards and the Joker. So that's what we would want to see.
Yeah, Anthony Edwards and Joker, and then it'll kind of be that, can Minnesota do it? Do they have the stamina in their tank for a team that just went to the conference championship 2 years in a row and then got swept virtually in back-to-back years? Did they get? I think they got a gentleman's sweep versus the Mavericks, and then the Thunder swept them, but it was basically a sweep both times around. So it's like, how much energy do you really have to get all the way back to the conference championship again? Because I think the Nuggets do give the Thunder a really hard time in the second round, because this year Denver has depth. Aaron Gordon's been out, and then the Nuggets have won. They're 8-2. They're on a 6-game winning streak right now. So I think they're pretty much locked into that 4 seed there. So I do think they're happy with Minnesota. And then Houston, the only problem with them is they're a really good defensive team, but outside of Kevin Durant, everyone on their team is kind of a stormtrooper. They just can't hit anything.
Yeah, I mean, I like Sengun on that team. Is Fred VanVleet going to come back? We shall see. But pretty much it's just Kevin Durant and Sengun, and the rest of the team, it's kind of a gamble. They don't really have depth as much either. So I don't really trust the Rockets to make it out of the first round. And right now, if they face the Lakers, I think the Lakers honestly beat them, because I think the Lakers at least have the coaching there. And then they have, obviously, with Luka getting hot, they have LeBron, who playoff runs, you can't discredit what he does there. And then Austin Reeves, he gets hot as well. So I like the Lakers to beat the Rockets in that sort of matchup.
Yeah, it depends. I do think the Lakers are the best matchup for the Rockets because the Lakers have no perimeter defense. The problem is Houston doesn't have anyone who can make you pay at the 3-point line, but they definitely have athletic guys like Eason, Amon Thompson, and Jamari Smith who can get to the basket. And then Kevin Durant is only playing 37 minutes a game. So I think when the playoffs come around, he's probably going to be closer to 40 minutes a game. He went on a 10-0 run this past game. And then as soon as he goes to the bench, then the Rockets kind of fall apart. But I do think that would probably be a 7 game series. Probably the Lakers win in a coin flip, but like their perimeter defense is just not good. Where if you get to a second round with the Spurs, I think all of their guards are going to eat them alive.
Yeah, Lakers, they're a good first round team, but they're definitely not going to go far. Their defense isn't good enough, um, but could be fun. The Lakers Rockets matchup could be fun, but I like the Lakers to prevail in that one.
But yeah, that's where we're at in the NBA playoffs right now. It starts April 14th to the 17th, so we might go ahead and do some deep dives for some of these teams next week. So definitely look out for that. But you're wearing the Bucky's hat right now, and uh, it is a good fad. A lot of people love Bucky's. You have people going crazy for the gas station store, but Bucky's is kind of another dark corporation where you have the friendly beaver on front. You have everyone who loves the gas station. Everyone in Texas talks about it, but do you know that Bucky's is currently suing a company called Mickey's, formerly Mickey's Convenience Store, because they think it's too similar to Bucky's? And this comes with Bucky's expanding into Ohio. So essentially, Mickey's has a cartoon moose who they think is too similar to the beaver, which is essentially they're like, oh, let's just have another wildlife animal be our mascot here. I don't think there's any problem with that. And then it's also a gas station convenience store. It's like, so you have essentially they're trying to do the same thing Bucky's is doing, but Bucky's doesn't like it. So now they're suing them because they think the logo is too similar and they don't want any competition because they want to expand into Ohio and they're trying to monopolize the market. And it comes with some precedents of Bucky's suing people similarly before. So this isn't the first time this has happened, but I was kind of disappointed when I saw that. Like, I get you got to do what you have to do, but like, did Walmart sue Target? It's like, you can't have another convenience store that has everything there, like clothes and food and groceries.
So I looked it up, and Bucky's was founded in 1982. You know when Mickey's was founded? 1982. So they both were
Hmm.
created the same year. They did have a sort of a rebrand with them where they made the cartoon moose a little more cartoonish in 2020, but they're pretty much everywhere. I guess there's a Mickey's in Phoenix, thankfully, so that's cool. But Bucky's, they're coming into Arizona as well. I don't see why they would care. Like, I get why Bucky's would sue them, but I don't think this is going to go anywhere in court for the simple fact that we need competition. That's what makes America great, is that we have McDonald's and Burger King and Wendy's and all these other different chains that compete with each other. And I don't know too much about Mickey's and what they offer, but I don't see any issues why there shouldn't be multiple. And better yet, if you want to be competing with Mickey's, then just create a gas station across the street from them and really go toe to toe. Because I feel like Bucky's has way more pull than what Mickey's would have. So kind of disappointing that they're suing them, but I don't think this is going to go anywhere in court. And I would pick that Mickey's probably wins this fight.
Yeah, the only thing is they've done this before. So it's like common for Bucky's to sue people. So they have precedents there. Their key argument is that Mickey is a smiling cartoon moose with facing right wide eyes, which too closely resembles the iconic smiling beaver. And then the color and scheme in the signage. The lawsuit highlights that Mickey's predominant use of red in its logo, interior, exterior signage, and employee uniforms as a factors that could lead to consumer confusion. I mean, if we're at a point in America where you're too stupid to go to the place with the beaver instead of a moose, like, oh, it's red. Yeah, but it's a fucking moose. It's not a beaver.
Yeah, I am looking at the logo side by side. There is a lot of similarities. They kind of have that same smile. They're looking at in the same distance. There is that similar red, so like I can see the confusion, but I don't think this is worth a lawsuit. Yet again, though, we are in America where suing is like kind of our secondary, so not super surprised. But I'm looking at the logo side by side. Like I don't see how you would get necessarily confused by this. But again, I think Bucky's has more pull, so I think they'll most likely prevail. But I don't think they're gonna win this particular fight.
Yeah, and the ones they did this before, there was a liquor store in Missouri sued called Ducky's. Like, okay,
Oh,
that's pretty
okay.
similar. But that is a duck mascot. That case was settled and dismissed in 2025. But like that one's a liquor store. Like Ducky's, Bucky's, that's pretty similar, but like it's still a duck and not a beaver. So if you get that confused, you're also dumb. And then there's one called Barkies, and it's like bark hyphen ease with a comma. And that is another Missouri dog friendly coffee shop. That one closed in 2025 following a trademark dispute over its name and dog in car imagery. And then there was Super Fuels in North Texas sued over a cartoon dog logo wearing a red cape.
Well, at least the other ones make sense. Like Bucky's, Barky's, like, all right, I see why you would see them there, but Mickey's, the logo, it's relatively resemblant, so like they want to get their money, sure, but just as kind of a bad look for Bucky's.
Yeah, it's kind of disappointing. Like everyone loves Bucky's, everyone goes crazy over a gas station. Like after you go a couple times, it kind of loses its lore, and then you're like, oh yeah, this is just a gas station. It's like great.
In the
I'm
middle of
glad you
nowhere.
love. I'm glad you love eating breakfast tacos there. But yeah, just kind of disappointed to see that. Saw the Bucky's hat, so figured I'd bring up some mascot litigation. Maybe we'll do another deep dive on that in the past. But
Well,
that is
we got some news that might disappoint you as well. They announced the Basketball Hall of Fame, and there's a couple of people that were nominated, some of which are very deserving, and some of which you might have some issues with. So, the
okay.
main three that were nominated, and they're going to get a full list later this week, but Amari Stoudemire headed to the Hall of Fame, stud.
Okay.
Candace Parker, well deserving WNBA. All right, cool, cool. And Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers is a Hall of Famer now.
I mean, say what you will about Doc Rivers. I mean, he's a solid NBA head coach, but like he should be sending a thank you letter to Rajon Rondo, Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, and Paul Pierce. But like this is a coach where you should talk about a guy who elevated his teams in the past and not melted down and is known for choking and blowing 3-1 leads. I believe he has the most blown series leads when it combines 3-1 and 3-2 leads in NBA history. And you have his meltdown with the Clippers. You also have him with the Philadelphia 76ers blowing series leads as well. And then with the Boston Celtics, you can honestly argue that that big three team underachieved and should have at least won 2 rings there. And then as soon as he left Boston, he didn't want to rebuild there. They ended up putting a great team together. So for me, like, he is a really good NBA coach historically, but Hall of Fame, like I guess everyone gets into the NBA Hall of Fame. So he did win a ring. So like that should be considered, but at the end of the day, was he really coaching that team, or was it Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen and Paul Pierce and Rajon Rondo?
I don't have any beef with Candace Parker making it. She definitely is deserving. One of the best WNBA players. For Doc Rivers, he's got top 10 in coaching wins, so I can kind of see it, but we are talking about Lob City, who never made it past the second round, and then the Celtics, who they did win in '08. They did make it back in 2010 as well. So like, all right, you want to put Doc Rivers in for the big three, like, all right, that's fine. But as far as like he's still coaching at this point, he hasn't won a playoff series in 15 years. Is he deserving at this point? That I think we can argue with. Also, another person that I'm going to poke a little bit of a hole in, not because I don't think he's an all-time great, or at least great for his era. Amari Stoudemire, if this was like baseball or the NFL, Amari Stoudemire would not be in the Hall of Fame. As much as I love Amari Stoudemire, he was a really good big man for about 4 to 5 years, and then he did kind of fall apart. And he had a great time in Phoenix. He was part of that, Phoenix Suns era where they were one of those teams that were always consistently in the playoffs. But if this was baseball, they wouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. Amari Stoudemire would not make the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I mean, did they let Eli into the Hall of Fame this year? He won 2 Super
Nope.
Bowls. Like, come on. And then he was the big man for the Phoenix Suns with Steve Nash, so you get that. But like again, the NBA is another league where a lot of players who aren't necessarily Hall of Fame talent get in, and it's generally been called the Hall of Very Good. And then here's some more stats about Doc Rivers. He is historically recognized as the only coach in NBA history to blow 3-1 leads. His reputation for postseason chokes is further cemented by holding the record for the most Game 7 losses, 10, and the most losses in a series closeout game, 32.
Jesus
So,
Christ.
like,
That's
okay,
a
well,
lot.
he is top 10 in head coaching wins. You're also top 10 in closeout wins in playoff series, 32. You have the most 3-1 collapses in NBA history, and then you also have lost the most Game 7s in NBA history. Is that Hall of Fame? Like, at some point, it comes down to coaching, right? I mean,
Yeah. I think of the three that I mentioned, the NBA has the weakest of the Hall of Fames by far. And this isn't to discredit Amari Stoudemire or Doc Rivers and what they've accomplished, but Hall of Fame, like it should be like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, LeBron James. It should be the pillars of excellence. Who are the best of the best of their generation? For the 2010s, we'll see Kawhi, and we'll see Dame Lillard, and we'll see Kyrie Irving. We'll see these guys cemented in the Hall of Fame. But it's when you put people in the Hall of Fame, like, no offense, DeMar DeRozan, who's probably not a Hall of Famer, or Kyle Lowry. Like, no offense to those guys. They're probably going to make the Hall of Fame, but they probably aren't going to be a Hall of Famer if this was the MLB Hall of Fame or the NFL Hall of Fame, where you have people like Bill Belichick, who isn't even a first ballot Hall of Famer. Like, that, to me, is part of the reason why the NBA Hall of Fame doesn't truly mean all that much.
yeah, it is the Hall of Very Good. And Doc Rivers is at
Good
one
coach.
point he was a very good head coach, but like there's still like you still have multiple times where you have the 3-1 leads, that's not counting 3-2 leads, but the fact that he has the most losses in game 7s and closeout wins is just ridiculous, but I guess that goes with blowing those many series leads. I don't have too much beef with Amari Stoudemire. Like, good for you, he's in. He's just like you were on the if Carmelo Anthony had a Hall of Fame teammate, like with the Knicks, and he couldn't get past the second round. Like they had Carmelo Anthony, J.R. Smith, Amon Shumpert, Amari Stoudemire on those teams. At one point, you had Tyson Chandler after he was on the Mavericks, Raymond Felton. You had all these like good players. I mean, it must be news to Carmelo Anthony that he had a Hall of Fame teammate there.
Yeah. And it sucks because, like, the Knicks era, Amari Stoudemire was pretty banged up, but he'll be known for the Phoenix. I think the reason he got in was because of the Phoenix Suns and what the Suns were from like 2005 to like 2010 with him and Phil Nash. But other than that, I just don't think that. I don't know. The Phoenix Suns they didn't make it past the Western Conference Finals, and every time they faced the Lakers or Spurs, they lost. So I just don't think the Suns, unfortunately, I don't think that's to be the reason why he gets in there.
Yeah, that is. You're like, there's someone who made it into the Hall of Fame and he's a head coach. I'm like, oh, first person that came to my mind was Doc Rivers. And it's like the NFL has a waiting period, but the NBA is just like, oh, you retired, go ahead. You can just walk into
Yeah.
the Hall of Fame if you're a coach. Like that's also weird.
Yeah. And yeah, NBA has weird stuff for it. I think there's a 5 year waiting period for it, but Amari Stoudemire's been retired for like a decade now, so I don't know what the parameters are, but I'd have to look that up.
Yeah, was
But
there must have just been no one else this year, so they're like, I guess we'll put in Amari Stoudemire.
so I guess you have to be retired for at least 3 years, Focuses on elite sustained performance, including NBA All-Star appearances, All-NBA championships, significant impact on the game, often requiring 10 plus points per game and high-level achievements rather than just raw longevity.
10? That's it? Come on. Unless you're like
Yeah.
an all-world defender, 10 points is a ridiculous standard for the Hall of Fame. How about 25 for the Hall of Fame? How about you have to average 25 points for at least 5 seasons at some point in your career?
Yeah.
Or be an elite all-pro defender. Like Rudy Gobert, say what you will about him if he gets into the Hall of Fame because of his defensive player of the years and he's an elite defender, but like if you if you're using 10 points a game as the standard, really?
Well, good news. Next year we'll see Carmelo, and then LaMarcus Aldridge will be up for there. Now, following year we'll have Andre Iguodala and Blake Griffin, John Wall, and then looks like those are the next big ones that are going to be eligible this upcoming Hall of Fame.
Yeah, if John
So,
Wall and Blake Griffin are in the Hall of Fame, then I'll lose my mind. Like, really? Two guys who never made it past the second round of the playoffs. Maybe John Wall
no,
made. I don't think John Wall ever made a conference championship, no.
no. Yeah,
Like,
it's a
even
joke.
Blake Griffin, he's someone like in the NFL or MLB, like, he had a good stretch with the Clippers, but like his career didn't have longevity, and he's someone who's probably going to make the Hall of Fame. Like what? Because he jumped over a car.
Yeah, that's pretty much it, to be honest. But as we conclude our show today, what have you been watching of late?
So this weekend went and watched John Wick 4. It was the first time I rewatched it since I'd seen it in theater. So I went ahead and rewatched that this weekend. This movie's a little bit of a haul. It pretty much wraps up the core John Wick movies. You have one, two, and three. Two and three kind of blend together for me, but I remember watching four in theater and thinking it was one of the better John Wick movies, and I think this one is still one of the better action movies that's come out in the 2020s. It's about 3 hours long in this one, so you definitely have to block off some time for it. But I like the concept of these movies where you just have a simple plot, and then you have pretty much three main action set pieces in this movie. The first one takes place in Japan. The second one is in a nightclub in Germany. And then the last one is pretty much everyone in Paris hunting him, where he's trying to get to this church for a duel at the end of the movie. So you're pretty much working with those major action set pieces, and this movie still holds up. And I was still entertained. There wasn't a single point in this movie where I was bored. It's interesting too watching a movie with Keanu Reeves where he really doesn't say much except for yeah. That's
Yeah,
about all he says throughout the rest of the movie.
I can say the John Wick franchise is pretty consistent. I watched the first one relatively recently, and I feel like of the action series, it's like you have the James Bonds of the world, you have like the Jason Bournes, and you have some of the other like more popular ones
Mission
today.
Impossible.
Mission Impossible, yeah. I feel like John Wick is historically pretty consistent, and I think Keanu Reeves is an easy guy to like. So it is interesting. And then they have the spin-off with Anna de Armas, which I heard was pretty good as well. But I need to check out the rest of the franchise. But I saw the first one relatively recently, and I did enjoy it as I get more into the action films.
Yeah, I think you would like this one a lot. The first one, so it's essentially like at some point in the series, the first one, everyone knows his dog gets killed, and that ends up with him. There's like this essentially, they create this hitman underworld where you have specific rules, they have their own currency and coins, and he ends up breaking some of the rules, which is murdering on hotel grounds. And then he's pretty much on the run for the last three movies. And four is just the resolution of that. It's a lot of concepts of like talking about when is this going to stop, and then him coming like face to face with his own mortality and thinking about that as you see like other people that he's run into throughout his Hitman career show up in this one, but the action in this one is definitely top tier. There is some moments where you take a step back and you're like, all right, I think he would have got shot here, here, and here if they didn't attack him one at a time. But just for like a stylized action movie, it really doesn't get too much better than this, and it really is a tight 3 hours, and they cover a lot of ground in this one.
Yeah. And I'm gonna have to check out more of that franchise. What I watched recently, um, it was one of earlier Martin Scorsese movies called After Hours,
Okay.
and so
With the weekend.
it's coming. Well, it's what inspired the After Hours album, but this came out in like the mid '80s. This is coming off of Taxi Driver and Raging Bull, and there was a movie between it that kind of flopped for him. But After Hours, it's this guy who works in an office who meets this woman at a cafe, and she essentially offers him to like go over with her and basically like hook up with her at her apartment. So this is the '80s, so he's taking a taxi to her, essentially her apartment, and his $20 bill to pay the taxi fare like flies out of the window. And for the rest of the night, all of these crazy things happen where essentially he has like this girl that he's going to see like commit suicide, and then there's like police chases, and then he goes to like a local bar and he has to get some keys. All this crazy shit happens along the movie, but essentially the further along in the movie it just becomes more and more insane as things just keep taking their twists and turns with it. It's definitely more of an experimental Scorsese film, but as a guy, when I think of Scorsese, I always think about like Goodfellas and Casino and like some of the more like mafia movies. It was kind of refreshing for me to see him do something other than the mafia movies. So that was one reason I wanted to check it out. And then also like this kind of inspired the album of After Hours, which is I think probably the best pop album of the 2010s or 2020s. So that was a part of it. So definitely, if you like '80s movies, you like kind of like that nostalgic, synthetic type of production. I definitely think you would like After Hours.
Okay. Yeah, I have to check this one out. What was that on?
This was on Peacock, I think, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken. It was on one
As
of the
long as
ones
you're
that we
not,
share.
as long as you're not watching it on Tubi.
No, well, we don't do that anymore. But it's on Warner Brothers. It's Warner Brothers, so I think it might be actually Max, but I don't remember putting. I think it might have been Peacock.
Okay.
I'll, I'll double
Yeah, I'll
check.
have to check that one out. Scorsese, definitely one of my favorite directors. I mean, he made one of my favorite movies in Wolf of Wall Street, which is kind of what I think of when I think about him. And then Shutter Island, The Departed. He'll even make a movie like The Silence, Gangs of New York is another movie I like from him. So definitely have to check out After Hours. And it looks like, yeah, what did he do right before this? This one's 1988, so he did The King of Comedy in 1982. Did that one kind of flop
Yeah, I'm looking at it. Box office budget was 19 million. He made 2
for him?
million. Yeah, so this one was kind of a major flop. So After Hours was kind of like his experimental movie before he made The Color of Money and eventually Goodfellas. So this was a lower budget Scorsese
Yeah.
movie. I think like Taxi Driver and Raging Bull are probably better. But if you like just like exploring great directors' catalog, I feel like this is a good entry in the Scorsese film.
Yeah, it looks like he played a character. He didn't direct it, but he played a character in A Shark's Tale.
Oh yeah, he was the shark, I think.
Played Sykes. Yeah, he played Sykes, and then they also have Christopher in Shark's Tale as well. Michael Imperioli.
Sick. But yeah,
Yeah, I'll
that's
have
what
to
we've been
check that
watching.
out though. Sounds interesting.
Yeah, I forget where I watched it on, but I'll have to show you when I find it
Yeah, I'm sure I'll be able to look it up.
for sure. But we covered the North Divisions, AFC, NFC. We talked about the recent NBA Hall of Fame, the current state of the NBA as we enter the playoffs, and all things Brickyard as well, what we've been watching. make sure to tune in next week as we cover all things NFL and NBA.
Yeah. Most importantly, until then,